and her husband and Merritt Coward come out to be the names that I am reading right now, and that's primarily the way I use the measure bars at that point in reading the reading books. Also, the way that they're loaded, downloaded, you don't have to download anything, you just look for the search for the book, look for
Good afternoon, y'all. Apologize for being a few minutes late with our start, but I know we're all juggling at this point, right? There are lots of committees on committees, and so we'll have some more members, I think, pop in as we go. But before we get started, I'd like to ask Chairman Mathiak to open us up with prayer.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Heavenly Father, we just come before you today and just commit this meeting to you. Help us to have good ears to hear so that we can hear the needs of all the people that are here today. Let us have patience with each other and just bless this afternoon. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll get started because I know everyone has places they probably need to be. Our first presenter today is the Department of Behavioral Health, Commissioner Kevin Tanner. Good to see you. We'll fix your microphone up and get you started. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for having us today. So we'll we'll jump in here. This first slide is fairly straightforward. This primarily talks about statewide adjustments that come directly from the governor's office and OPB relating to changes such as teamwork's cost, the federal Medicaid assistance percentage changes. So nothing really exciting here. If you have questions, I obviously will be able to answer those for you, but these are statewide adjustments that you're going to see in really every budget you take a look at. So next, we'll jump into the addictive disease section of our budget. The first one there is, you saw this in the amended budget where there was a reduction of funds for the hepatitis C screening program, and I know that that was restored in the House version of the budget for the amended budget that went over to the Senate. So you see the $232,081 deduction there for the hepatitis C program. And then on down, you see the adult developmental disability section. This is to increase funds for 100 new now comp waivers. As you know, this is the waiver that we operate for our intellectual developmental disability population here in Georgia. And we'll talk more about that and the numbers that we're seeing here later in the presentation. The next item is to increase funds by the same amount to annualize the 100 new now comp waivers that were in the FY25 budget. As you know, most of you have been on the committee long enough to know that the way this is budgeted is they budget about half a year in the next fiscal year, and then it catches up the following year as it's annualized. So that's what those numbers are. The next item is something that we talked a little bit about in the amended budget, but it's something this committee is definitely familiar with, and this committee actually led on to help make this happen, and that's the Macon Crisis Stabilization Diagnostic Center for individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, $3.1 million. This is a game changer for the state in so many ways. I know all of you get phone calls from hospitals where someone's in a hospital and we're having a difficult time finding placement for that individual. This annualizes that funding. That facility will open in the current fiscal year. It's there in Macon, and there's really nothing like it in the country. And I know Chair Lady Dempsey was there for the groundbreaking, and it's really been one of the spearhead pillars to get this done. So thank you for this. And it's I was there last week, and it's beautiful, and we're excited to have a ribbon cutting soon and get it open. Next item is this big number here, the $26.7 million. This is the additional amount that's needed to annualize the new rate study that you all funded last year, the current fiscal year, FY25. So this is the additional $26 million to do that. The total amount, the total cost to the state on an annual basis for this is estimated to be $107 million. This was a rate study that was long overdue, and we appreciate members of this committee really leading on this area. And then we have the adult forensic services. Several things I'm excited about. The first one is the Dodge Jail-Based Restoration Program. This would be to annualize the operations of that facility. This is a YDC that that had been closed by DJJ, and actually Representative Danny Mathis reached out to me and asked me if we could use this building. It's there in Dodge County, about an hour or so below Milledgeville. And we looked at it and we decided we could, so the governor has put funding in to annualize that. It's open. It's 30 beds, and we're taking patients and inmates there, and we're operating both the security piece and the clinical piece of that facility. So Dr. Risby, our chief medical officer, has been really leading on this, along with Gil Sutton, our hospital administrator. We base this operations out of our Central State Hospital, so our medical director and our hospital administrator oversee this. Next item there is something else I'm excited about. This is we've opened 17 new beds at Central State Hospital in Milledgeville in the Allen building. This is for an Operation New Hope, and this is something, again, that you all helped us with last year. This is for individuals who have been in the hospital for a long time, but they're clinically ready to get out, but they need some help getting to the place where the court is ready to let them out of the hospital. And this would annualize operating those 17 beds, and this is a transitional type facility within the state hospital. And then the 1.1 million line or number 15.4.3, this is a additional capacity at our skilled nursing facility at our Atlanta hospital. This will be up to 20 beds. We're going to operationalize 16 beds at this facility. We have individuals in our hospitals who need to be in a nursing home, but the state no longer has its own nursing home facility, and we try to get the individuals in a private nursing home, but because our patients are not always perfect patients from a behavioral perspective, we get turned down, and most of the time. So we've been able to stretch some additional capacity out of our skilled nursing facility, so we're going to be moving 16 individuals in, and this would be funding to allow for that to occur. And then the last item there under our forensic work, this will be for a new capacity at our Columbus Hospital. This is for Operation New Hope Columbus, and this will be for 30 beds. And again, this is for individuals who have been in the hospital for a long time, because we have about 60% of our forensic population at the hospital have been there on average of 6 years, many for 10, 15, 20 years. This is a way to try to start stepping those individuals out of the hospital. By moving these 30 individuals over to this unit, it will open up 30 additional forensic restoration beds, which we desperately need with the number of people that are currently in jail waiting on a hospital bed. And all of these things we're talking about is for the forensic population. And then under adult mental health, this $12.5 million is to annualize the rate study as it relates to the adult mental health population. Again, you allocated some funding in the current fiscal year. We are implementing that rate study increase now. Our providers are extremely excited about this, and this is the number that's needed for FY26. Next item is just reducing some funds for the merit system. This is some corrected salary data that's there. And then the 1.1 million. One of the things that we've been working on, both myself and the other agency heads, is looking for ways over the last couple of years of how we can streamline our processes to make them more effective and efficient. One of the things that we saw is that we have some duplication when we talk to providers. For instance, over at DCH, they license the Drug Abuse Treatment Education Program, DATAP. They also license the Narcotic Treatment Programs and the Community Living Arrangements, the CLAs, and the Adult Residential Mental Health Facilities. So they're doing a lot of work with our population. The people come to us for a piece of that, and then they're having to go to DCH for a piece of that. We struggle oftentimes because we're not able to change those policies. So in working closely with DCH and the governor's office, the decision was made to move that operation over to us to streamline that process. So both DCH put this in, the legislation to do this in as an agency request to the governor. The governor has approved that, so there's a piece of legislation that's going to be tracking through the General Assembly that would change in the law who's responsible for this service, and this would be the funding picking up from, this is not new funding, it was being removed from DCH and transferred to our agency. And then, again, that's all in process. The up under Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, $1.8 million. This is the operational funding to operationalize the Gateway Child and Adolescent Crisis Stabilization Unit in Savannah. It's under construction. It's not going to obviously open at the beginning of the next fiscal year, so this would fund it for its estimated start time. We estimate that will open in summer of '26. It's 16 room capacity with potential for expansion. So we're extremely excited about this. We were down for the groundbreaking of that a few months ago, and I know Gateway's excited to add this to the inventory of our available resources. The other one there is Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission, $10 million. If you'll recall, the governor and the General Assembly funded a considerable amount of money to try to bring some of our facilities up to the correct standard based on a report that was conducted through the State Building Authority. And roughly it was about $10 million short of the total amount that the report showed that was needed. So the governor's placed an additional $10 million to go with that report to try to bring our campuses up to standard. We have a lot of work going on right now all across our campuses. Thank you to you, the governor, for supporting this. We got a lot of work to do, and it's going to take a few years to get it implemented, but we're making progress. The estimated total cost of the RLR report was $80 million. So this will bring us right there at that number. So we're very excited about that. Total allocated funding with this $10 million will be $78.75 million. So a lot of progress happening across the state. So I'm going to go into some of the things that your staff had asked us to cover. That concludes all the budget changes from the governor's budget. But I'll talk a little bit about our intellectual and developmental disability section of the agency. You all are very familiar. I look around at this committee, seasoned legislators who've got a lot of experience in this area. But you know that we have a total of 13,742 people currently in waiver services for now comp. And we continue to grow those numbers as the need continues to grow in our state. We increased the total number of people in waiver services. The net gain was 444 individuals this year versus last year. And obviously the need continues to grow. This shows you, this graph shows you how many people at the height of our staff was able to enroll new individuals in waiver services. We had 900 prior to the pandemic. That number dropped because of the reduction in force as a result of the downturn in the economy during COVID. So we got down to only new individuals of 500. We've been able to start building that staff back up thanks to you and your funding, and we anticipate in 2024 we hit 780 new individuals. Now, that doesn't, and I told you we had 444 net, but we enrolled 780, but obviously there were some people who rolled off the waiver list who were receiving waivers for various reasons. That could be they moved out of state, that could be they passed away, or that could be they made a choice or their family made a choice to exit waiver services. But total new people were 780. So with our current staffing at full strength, we should be able to hit that 900 again over the next year or so. So we're excited about the direction we're heading. I want to talk a little bit about planning for the future. We have a lot happening within the IDD division of our agency that I think is important for you to know about. Ron Wakefield, who leads this division, does a tremendous job. He has a lot of experience in this area. I keep hearing rumors he's thinking about retiring in the near future, so I'm going to ask that you introduce some legislation that would prohibit Ron Wakefield from retiring. But he's done a good job, and he's the biggest advocate in the state, in my opinion, for this population. He's worked in this field for a long, long time. But one of the things that he did is he put together a work group that's done some tremendous work looking at the planning list, and I'm going to go through these things in a little bit more detail, but I will tell you that we have work to do. But Guidehouse came in. They're a nationally known group, a third-party vendor that came in and put together some plans for us, along with Ron, his team, and some external stakeholders who had a seat at the table and will continue to have a seat at the table. Also, part of this is looking at a new 1915C waiver. That's part of the plan they laid out One of the things that we identified through this process, there's a lot of people who are on the planning list that could be served with something less than a now comp waiver or a comp waiver. And some other states that we looked at have implemented this, so this is something we'd like to pursue. And we feel like we could do this with some existing dollars because we're spending state dollars providing some care to individuals who are not currently receiving a now comp waiver, but they are on the planning list. So we're continuing to look at that and continue to explore what that may look like. The other thing that we've identified, and we've already started this process, was that we oftentimes do not have the right types of homes for some of the individuals we're trying to place, and that's something that we're working on with the facility down in Macon and some of the other work that we're doing. And then the fourth one there is the facility in Macon that we just talked about. That's a picture up at the top. That is actually what it's actually looking like today. I was there last week, so it is furniture will be coming in soon in the month of March, and we're excited to get moving. I wanted to just show you this graph. This shows you, based on the changes to that you provided the funding for the rate study increase, this shows you that we're seeing a direct impact on turnover with our direct care professionals within the IDD providers. So with the increased funding, we're seeing a lower turnover, so they're able to keep their staff. This has been one of the biggest challenges for us in attracting new providers and getting an adequate number of providers. One of the things I've told you in last year and the year before is even with additional now comp waivers, we didn't have the number of providers we needed to be able to serve the individuals. We're seeing that start to change with these rates going into effect. Just to give you an update on the rates, I mentioned this through the numbers in the budget, but we have about 90% of the FY25 claims have now been paid at the new higher rates. Providers began billing at the new rate starting in November of 2024. So all increases have been activated in the system. We appreciate our internal staff who's worked on this, but also DCH. You know, it's hard to get a rate study done. It's hard to get the money appropriated, but it's also hard to get everything updated in the system. And that has happened, and we're well underway. So again, I want to thank this committee for helping us lead on this in this area. People often ask me in this role what keeps me up at night. I will tell you, one of the things that keeps me up at night is our growing forensic population that need our services. This shows you the type of hospital beds we have, inpatient beds in our system. We have 641 hospital beds that are forensic beds, 298 adult mental health beds. You also see the split there with pretrial evaluations, competency restoration versus civil commitments. A large number of our population are there because they've been found not guilty by reason of insanity and ordered to the state hospital. The competency restoration, those are individuals who have been in jail. They've been ordered to the state hospital based on a competency evaluation that found them incompetent. They come to us for restoration services. And that is where we're seeing the backlog. You all probably have gotten a phone call from a sheriff. We have, and I think I've got a slide that shows you this in a minute, but we have almost 800 people in jail today waiting on a hospital bed. The other thing that really keeps me up at night is this chart. So you can see that in the near future, our line of the number of people who are in the hospital for not guilty by reason of insanity, the individuals who are not going to leave the hospital, they're staying there. That number is going to cross with our total number of beds. When that happens, we will have no hospital beds anymore available in the state for restoration services. That day's coming in the near future. So it's important that you're aware of that. That's where we're heading. This shows you the number of pretrial evaluations. You see that dipped, but then it spiked and it's leveled off. But you can see FY24, we had 2,611 orders received for evaluations. I will tell you that this is an area where Dr. Oliver and her team has done a good job being able to decrease the time people are waiting on the initial evaluation. We've been able to increase staff in this area. We've increased the proficiency and timeliness that they're getting these reports done. We've also hired some contract folks from some of the universities, the psychologists, to help with this, with training from our staff. So we've been able to speed this up. But you can see those numbers have climbed over the last few years. This is another number that's obviously concerning from a population perspective, the percentage of people who are found incompetent versus competent. So this is when we go out, when a judge does an order that says, do an evaluation on Kevin and tell me if he's competent or not. This is the percentage of time that they're found not competent. So the majority of them are competent, but you can see the number that's not continues to grow. I don't think it's because I've asked these questions of our doctors, it's not because our staff's changed the way they're doing the evaluations. It's that the courts are sending us the people who really need an evaluation. So, and I think you're going to see this number grow. There's some legislation in the Senate that would require a hearing before a judge would sign an order for an evaluation, because sometimes, in rare cases, attorneys use it as a stall tactic. So Judge Goslin has really led on this in this area up in Hall County, and she led a committee of judges that talked about what could they do to help, and one of the suggestions was to require a hearing in this case. Get the person in the courtroom, get the attorneys in the courtroom, and she's done that in Hall County, and it has drastically decreased the number of orders. But what she's also saw happen is it's helping get people into services they need much sooner than just staying in jail. So, but I think as that happens, this number will increase. This shows you the forensic wait list. 94% increase from January 23 to February 25. The number has leveled out a little bit. Part of that leveling out, though, I will tell you, is because we're bringing some of these other beds online I talked about, like Dodge and like Operation New Hope. All of those beds are not filled yet because obviously we're not able to just fill all of those in one day. We do that over a period of a few weeks, so that's happening now. But I think you're going to see this number continue to climb. I had predicted we'd probably level out at about 1,000. I'm hoping with the new beds we're adding into the system, we can level out below that. But it's a concern. This just is some quick information as a recap about some of the things that we're doing that you all have helped us do to try to address this problem. I like to remind people that we don't just sit around and complain, that we actually try to get out and find solutions, and that's what we've done. Our hospitals have done an incredible job of coming to me with ideas. Out of the medical director, Savannah, the idea of Operation New Hope came about. The hospital medical director and the administrator at Central State came up with the idea of the 17 beds. Dr. Risby and his staff in Atlanta came up with the idea of the skilled nursing facility. So we're trying to stretch every bed we can. The Dodge facility came as a result of a state legislator calling. So these are all things that we've done to add, as you can see, just under 100 new beds once the skilled nursing facility opens up. So just to mention to you too, we had a study done by A&M, and they predict that we need 232 additional hospital forensic beds. Not everybody can be served at an Operation New Hope or a Dodge type facility. Some people need the inpatient hospitalization that only comes at one of our hospitals. I also want to give you a quick update on the DOJ settlement. This is something I'm pretty excited about. It sounds like I'm a glutton for punishment, but I've actually enjoyed the opportunity to dig into the settlement agreement, to meet multiple times with DOJ. They're on site every 6 weeks with the court monitor, and they have been, we've developed a good partnership. Monica Patel and our team at DBHDD do a really good job of improving the system that we have. And we filed the first joint filing with the court, with the consent of DOJ, as you can see, to remove us from multiple active monitoring areas for the DOJ settlement. That was a big win for us. We have turned around some new data to them, and we anticipate in the very short term that we will have a second filing with the court to release us from additional oversight and monitoring. And those areas include crisis services, behavioral health case management, peer support services, oversight, and quality. We're going to be down to some small, not small and hard, they're hard to do, but a small number of items that we're going to be laser focused on the behavioral health side of the settlement agreement. We look forward to developing a plan to be able to move out of that over the next couple of years. So we're going to be laser focused on that. And I will tell you, one of those things is the Georgia Housing Voucher Program, the supportive housing program. You can see our numbers. We have currently 2,159 individuals housed. You can see the average monthly cost of that and what that annualized cost is. We have also, because we've just really been out of funding in this area, we have developed a really good partnership with Commissioner Nunn at DCA and the Choice Voucher Program. We actually at DBHDD are entering into an MOU with DCA to hire 2 individuals to be at DCA just to help get our individuals through the Choice Voucher Program. But it's been a little bit slow working out the kinks, but this is one of the big issues that we've got to resolve as we move forward with the settlement agreement. This is something you all have been focused on, and obviously this is something you provided a lot of funding for over the last several years as part of the settlement agreement. And I just remind you, this is something that Georgia agreed to do as part of that settlement agreement. So with that, the other item that I think we'll be focused on around the settlement agreement is some staffing with some of our programs like our ACT teams, and we've been meeting internally on that. That's a little easier to resolve, and I think we're going to have a good plan to make that happen. So I feel very, very good about where we are on the behavioral health side of the settlement agreement. The state has made a tremendous amount of progress, and a lot of that has to do with this committee and the General Assembly funding these efforts for the community. And so thank you for that, and I think we are seeing tremendous progress. But we're going to have some humps to get over the next couple of years, but with your help, we're going to be successful. With that, again, I always ask you to please follow us on social media, help support and spread the message of DBHDD. One of the things we're going to be rolling out soon, because you've heard me say this, we were in a staffing state of an emergency. We've overcome some of that. We still have plenty of openings, but I will tell you we're also about to roll out in conjunction with Cox Media a new recruitment website. We have recruitment videos of testimonies from our staff. That all will roll out in the next 30 days or so. So stay tuned for that, and please help us spread the word to attract people to come to work for your state government. So with that, I'm happy, Madam Chair, to answer questions.
Thank you so much. Good presentation. We do have some questions. So we'll start with Chairman Saines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, I want to first thank we have many responsive departments, but I have never seen a department more responsive than when Camden County Sheriff's Office had a need, and he was a couple of days later taking a picture on the 95 border from coming into Florida into Camden, because you all met with that department, and actually I think had 3 cases assessed. When it comes to that, and I appreciate that, but I know it's an indicator of a larger issue, the slide on page 16, the bed burn rate, where we're going to, in 2033, we're going to meet our capacity for all the beds in place. And just want to make sure that I'm understanding that right. These are individuals that have created a victim in the state of Georgia, that haven't got the treatment they've needed, and the courts recognize that they are not guilty because they didn't get the treatment they already needed. And because we don't have further capacity, we're going to create, in theory, more victims in this state by not if we don't address this. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that we're going to have to deal with individuals one way or the other. We're going to have to find ways to treat them in community and get to them early and provide the treatment that they need. And if not, this particular population who does get connected to the criminal justice system will be sent to the state, just like this case shows. And we're getting to a place where we're going to run out of capacity. Yes, sir.
And I appreciate that. I know some, you've mentioned some of the facilities that you've partnered with sheriff's offices to try to increase this capacity on a quick basis. Can you highlight, is this a temporary fix that's not as efficient as kind of the standard approach, or is this a model that you're finding is cheaper and more effective and gets beds in quicker? Because it looks good in theory, and I'd like to have one in my district. I think every sheriff's office might need a wing for it, but is that actually a sustainable solution, or is that just not seen as efficient as kind of our standard model?
It's not as efficient as being in a hospital setting. It's just what we really don't have any other options. But the most efficient treatment model would be to be able to have that person to come to a hospital and then receive the treatment that they need, and then step down into the community at that point.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Oliver.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. I'd like to turn our attention to page 24 in the housing voucher program. This slide says maximizing federal resources by transitioning stable housing individuals to federal housing. What is that? Can you explain that to me? I might have missed it in your presentation.
Yeah. No, I'll be glad to. I don't think I mentioned that. So our goal is, as an agency, in order to create a sustainable long-term program for housing for our population, which is they have a serious persistent mental illness and they're homeless, they're unhoused, it is easier to get the person housed through the Georgia Housing Voucher than it is through the HUD Choice Voucher program. The state, Commissioner Nunn, DC8, they have dedicated half of their choice vouchers they have available every year to our population.
How many is that?
That would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 new vouchers a year. But it is a slower process to get that person enrolled. So what our goals are is to have enough funding to get people into the into the Georgia Housing Voucher program, and immediately start working to get that person moved over to the choice voucher, so that by the time they've been in the housing voucher for 12 months, unless they are forbidden for certain reasons, one would be if they are a convicted sex offender, for instance, they can't do the HUD funding, is to get that person transferred over to the choice voucher, which then opens up funding in the housing voucher. That is what our long-term goal is. We're having to right-size that system, and it comes with some pains, but that's why one of the barriers we have found is at DCA, they're really, really good at dealing with the group they are used to dealing with, but with our providers that are sending people the choice voucher, they need a little bit more hand-holding, and that's why we've identified hiring 2 people that are trained just specifically to deal with our population, and those folks hopefully will be in place soon, and we should see that increasing.
Would it be more efficient simply to put a large amount of money into the Housing Trust Fund and give all of our parts of the state, counties and cities, more flexibility? I continue to be a little disappointed in that lack of new funding.
Well, there's to that question, I think, because part of the barrier too is even if we have a funding source available like the choice voucher, we may be able to get somebody a choice voucher. That doesn't guarantee them they're going to find housing, because as you know, and as all of you know, and I know even in my community, affordable housing is very, very challenging in the state. So that's another barrier. We just have a lack of affordable housing.
I keep having hope for the Housing Trust Fund. Seems like the most efficient route. So I know that's on your mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your testimony today, Commissioner. You were talking about hiring some contractors to get evaluations done. I think last summer, fall, when we talked about one of the cases we had up in Dade County, you said the average wait time for an evaluation maybe was 330 days. Is that number dropping?
So that's not the wait time for the evaluation. That's the time once somebody's received the evaluation and they've been found not incompetent and the judge has ordered them to come to us, that
Yep.
the wait time is
Okay.
that correct. That's still correct. And that's increasing, not decreasing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I will say the time to get the evaluation has decreased because we have a little bit more control. The capacity issues driving the time to get in the hospital.
Yeah, because I think, in Lookout Mountain's judicial district, sometimes they're having to call your staff up to get something done in a case, to move the cases on.
Mm-hmm. And we get calls every day, but the problem is, it's like I tell sheriffs, if we move this person up, there's
Move another person
50
back.
other sheriffs who's been waiting longer than you. So
Right.
it's frustrating to them, it's frustrating to us, and it's a capacity issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Glaze.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Tanner.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask a quick question from page 11 on the DOJ settlement. Were there any funds that were directly related to youth mental health? And if so, what type of funding and programming that we can expect when we have students who commit crimes, who are in the system and now needing specific help, while they also spend their time trying to, repay for crimes that they may have committed?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. So the question specifically to youth who commit crime. Yeah, so our agency is responsible for adults primarily who are uninsured or underinsured. We are the state mental health authority, so we help DJJ and others when we need to, but typically DJJ provides those types of resources through their system. If someone's either in their custody or they're on juvenile probation, they help connect them to resources. And then also, almost every child in Georgia has health insurance. It's either Peach Care, managed care, or private health insurance. And the health care provider is responsible in Georgia. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but they're responsible under federal law and state law to provide coverage for mental health services. So they're the primary provider of those services.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to drill down. So youth offenders who have been charged as adults are the focus of my question.
Mm-hmm. So we're not able to take anyone into the hospital unless they're 18. That was, again, part of the settlement agreement. The state did used to operate a child and adolescent hospital, and it was closed. So it's my understanding, and I'm not in the corrections system specifically, but they get transferred to the Department of Corrections. I think when they reach a certain age, they're housed, I think, with DJJ even though they're charged with an adult. But I'm not the expert in that area. But they receive services through the state agency responsible for their custody. Just like in the Department of Corrections, they have mental health counselors and resources within the prison. DJJ has mental health counselors and doctors, psychiatrists within their system that provide those resources. Our agency doesn't provide those.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Let me ask you this. I know that we work so much in the now. I know that your agency, like has been stated up here, works so hard to deal with issues as they occur, and they are every day. And we thank you for doing that. Kind of looking ahead, both of these issues like housing vouchers, the forensic services, everything is getting pretty much at capacity. What kind of long-range plans and looking ahead are y'all doing right now? I know we're working on a budget that's impacting right now, but just to kind of get a picture of where you feel we can move as a state.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent question. And that's one of the things we've tried to do is work with some experts, outside expert, third-party groups to try to identify what is the need now and out 10, 15 years. We did that with crisis services. So we have a plan in place that shows we need 8 new crisis centers across Georgia between now, and it was 10 years. That, of course, now it's 2032, so it's less than that. But you all have funded a couple of those. So, but we still need 6 more to be able to get to what we need as a state. The inpatient bed capacity, same thing, really coming in and taking a look at what is the right capacity number, what do we need to be at, and planning for that today. You know, it's challenging because funding is so difficult to get, and I appreciate that we usually end up putting out fires. So it's like what's burning today, what's on the front page of the paper, what's on the news, that's the issue of the day, and we got to take care of it and we got to fund it. That sometimes we don't necessarily plan out what's going to happen 5 years from now or in 2033 when we have no beds, and then it really becomes the emergency. So I'm trying to lay those kind of things out for everybody to say, look, if we don't build new capacity, there's a cliff coming, and it's coming fast. So I'm hoping that we can get good support from the legislators and others to help appropriate dollars that are going to be needed to take care of this population. I will just say this too, you know, the state's growing. We've added a lot of people in Georgia and continue to add folks, and a certain percentage of that population is going to require our services, and those numbers are growing. And other states are facing this. I will tell you that all across the country, other folks are building additional capacity for their growing populations. So, but I want to leave you on a really positive note. I think on the IDD side, the work that Ron and the advocacy groups that have been doing, working hand in hand, really identifying the hard-to-place individuals, what those barriers are, the 2 pilot homes that have been open in Augusta, the facility that's going to open in Macon, the provider rate study that you all have funded. All of that is really going to be a game changer for that system long term. Yes, it's going to require some additional financial investment, and I know you'll hear about that today with the need for more now comp waivers, but we're heading in the right direction. We're laying the foundation to be successful in those areas.
Is part of that still relying on private psych bed contracts too? Are we still engaged there at a pretty large level?
Yeah, so where we use private psychiatric beds is really in 2 cases. One, if somebody goes on the bed board and they are not picked up by CSB in the first 7 hours, then the private beds that the state's contracted with can see that Kevin is there. They can take me, and then we as an agency pay for that cost. And then we also send juveniles who need to receive services for competency services. They go to a private group also, because we don't obviously have a child and adolescent facility. So we do have a strong dependency on private psychiatric beds in the crisis system, not the long-term care. They don't provide the long-term care, just really that stabilization. One of the things that we're doing, and we should have this online in March, we've identified that the bed board has been a barrier to success because we hear from hospitals who say this person's been on the bed board way too long. So we have placed in each region a crisis person in each region that's monitoring that bed board. Brandon and Jason and the team are also working with a vendor, and this is going to be up in March, changing the bed board. So instead of Kevin showing up to all the CSBs that I'm on the bed board and I need a bed, what's going to happen now is that bed board will search without anybody doing anything, just the technology, what's the closest available bed that a CSB has available. Then it's going to alert the CSB that Kevin belongs to you and you need to make arrangements to get Kevin. If they can't take me for some reason, they're going to have to go in and tell the reason. That way, from an accountability perspective as the commissioner, there can be some accountability. I anticipate that this is going to do two things. It'll reduce our reliance on private psychiatric beds and save money. It'll also help make sure that we're getting people served as close to where they are as possible. So when they're released, the discharge planning is much more effective. If I'm being taken 3 hours from my home, it's not going to be very effective discharge planning versus if I'm in a county where I live. So all of that should come online in March.
Great request. Yeah. Chairman Mathiat.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Will that include any out-of-state beds? It seems like in the past we've talked about that a little bit.
Where the out-of-state beds come into play is when it's private insurance.
Okay.
So these are all state-funded beds. Part of what you've heard from people in the past has been that our reimbursement rates were so low in Georgia that our beds were being taken up by people from out of state. With the new rates that are being paid now, a lot of that's changing, but that's the private side. And part of the mental health and the work that we're having to do is we also have to figure out a way, how do we make sure that the private health insurance and managed care is taking care of the population that they're supposed to take care of. And that's where the bill that you all passed, House Bill 1013, requiring parity in Georgia, and there's going to be some other legislation this year that really talks about how that needs to be enforced to make sure these individuals are getting the services they actually need.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you one more big dream question here. Maybe it'll be the closer. We'll see. But with all the things that you are doing, if you were to look ahead and be able to say, listen, there's something we need to do to really get ahead of this, what one thing should we begin to focus on and try to help the agency really address?
So OPB likes to famously ask me what's the number one priority, and I always remind them that we're in a system that has to be brought up together, because if I increase part of the system, like if my gut answer would be more inpatient capacity because of the people that are in jail who need to be in a hospital. So that would be my first answer. But if I don't increase the opportunities for community-based services, then I'm not going to have a place to get those folks out of the hospital and step them down. We just completed a pretty major study looking at that step-down capacity, CIHs, intensive residential treatment, forensic apartments, how many of those that we need. So we're working on changing the whole structure of our forensic division with our community division to try to be more effective and efficient in that area. But capacity, inpatient capacity is a really, really big challenge right now, because I got 800 people in jail. The other thing I'll say too, because it's difficult to really put a number on, because there's so many people who need to come in and receive stabilization services. But and Dr. Isby, if he was here, he would tell you that there are some people who need to stay longer than 3 to 7 days to really get well and to get to a place where, because our goal should always be community-based services, but they've got to stay long enough to get to a place where they can be successful in the community. And sometimes without having that capacity, we just have this system that has to churn people in and out, stabilize them, get them out as quickly as possible, because we've got 800 folks in jail waiting and people in hospitals waiting on a bed. So it's a challenge.
Well, thank you. We have had one more light with that, though. Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good to see you. Sorry I'm late. I've been dealing with problems that has taken the last hour. And the problem I want to ask you is, you just answered the main question I was going to ask. But We keep throwing money, more money, more money, more money, and you've done a lot of work. And it seems like it's never enough. The 800 prisoners, are they all mental health? Is it drugs and mental health? What's the problem where we can start looking at that better?
Yeah, all 800 have been deemed by a clinical psychologist to be incompetent. So it's not that they can't be criminally held liable for their actions. That's not the case. The case is they're not mentally stable enough to participate in their own criminal defense. So they come to us, and the folks who come to us for competency restoration, they're not coming for treatment. All they're coming in for restoration services. So they're there strictly for that reason. They're not competent. I will tell you, if you talk to sheriffs, I mean, these are folks who are very acute individuals who are very difficult also to manage in the jail setting.
Right. And I appreciate it because I have talked to several, and it's like it's more and more every month. Mm-hmm. And, I was talking to a deputy, he's a good friend. He's almost like the light was switched on. And now there's more and more coming. And I'm like, why is it all of a sudden now more and more? There's something causing problems. And I appreciate it. And I apologize for being late and missing so much of it. I've been working on other things. But thank you again. And hopefully we'll get this year over the hump a little bit stronger. And we'll get better. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you to your team here who's with you too as well.
Have a good day. Thank you.
You too. Okay, so next we'll invite the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency Executive Director Chris Wells to come and give us some updates and about your requests. And I think we do have does everyone have the information?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, committee, for giving us the opportunity to speak today. It's going to be a hard act to follow, but we'll do our best to follow up and be quick and be brief. My name is Chris Wells. I'm the Executive Director for the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. Just definitely wanted to take time to thank the Governor's Office, OPB, General Assembly, and staff that's helped us over these last couple years. I tell the team we've packed 50 years of changes in the last 4.5 years. It's been exciting, but there's been a lot of changes and adjustments, and we're excited about the next couple years as well. With that being said, I'll go to our next slide, which provides just a brief overview of who we are, what we do as an agency. Last year we spent, in our upper left-hand column, you'll see we spent over $162 million in federal, state, and other funds. We're heavily federally funded. You'll see there most of our services are in personnel as well as grants and benefits. We have 5 budgeted programs for individuals that are unaware of business enterprise. So if you're familiar with vending locations, we run locations on basis. Of course, Disability Adjudication Services, which is our second largest program. We'll talk about that just a little bit later. We have a manufacturing plant in Bainbridge, Georgia. And then we have a vocational rehabilitation program, which is our largest program there. As you can see, we serve over 32,000 individuals a year in our VR program and over 18,000 students. And then we adjudicate over 90,000 Social Security claims. That is a lot. And as you can see there, we operate over 26 field offices throughout the state. So that's a quick highlight. We're administratively attached to DHS, so a lot of times we can get a little get crossed up in various funding. But our next slide here, you can see just a summary of who we are, our budgeted programs, and you can see kind of how we operate there. Again, VR is our largest program. And then our Disability Adjudications program, which is a partnership with our federal SSA program, is our second largest program. Our next slide is basically a summary. This year we didn't have any operational adjustments, but just like Commissioner Tanner, we had quite a few statewide spreads that you can see on your tracking sheet if you're looking at that. But overall, for our 2026 budget, we have an increase of $72,966, and again, those are our statewide spreads, as you can see there. Our next slide which really shows the meat and potatoes of our 2026 requests, is essentially our investment over the last few years in the infrastructure in our residential campus. We'll talk about that just a little bit later, but this will be basically the third year in a row we received some bond funding to be able to assist us update our nearly 90-year-old campus in Roosevelt Warm Springs. The campus has moved from helping with polio vaccinations, moving through the Department of Education as a residential facility, and now we're considered a non-public post-secondary institution that offers certifications for individuals with disabilities. And then our second request there is our manufacturing plant. Again, another 90-year-old plant that we're trying to update with our networks and our infrastructure there. So our bond request going into 2026 would be $9.3 million. With that being said, I do have some agency updates, but if you have any questions, I'll pause there related to the bond request.
Are there any questions at this point from the committee? Do you see a couple coming up here? So Representative Donahue.
Thank you. Mr. Wells, quick question. When you're looking at, let's say, Social Security, and we're looking at the feds are involved, what is the process and how long is that really taking? Because I do hear that it takes forever, and how do we fix that?
So, right, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the slide. I have some facts and some information, but to answer that question directly, here in Georgia, it's taken 390 days. Of that, over 200 days is sitting in the backlog, and what that means is when individuals apply, it goes to the feds, they immediately look at it for a preliminary review, and then it sits in the queue. Once we get it assigned to an adjudicator, it takes about 95 days from the beginning of individuals going through the process of sending them out to be able to make that determination. Once we make that determination, the claim actually goes back to the feds because we're only doing the determination based on the information in the file. The feds ultimately makes the decision on what that cost is going to be, whether it's a legitimate claim, and they come in behind us to be able to make that adjustment.
So it could take 450, 500 days.
Well, right now it's taking a total, that 390 includes the 95 days once it gets assigned. So it's about 200 in backlog, but about 390 days as of right now.
And as many employees as they have in the Fed, would you say that there's half working or something going on? And I'm trying to be honest because, I mean, there is a problem, obviously.
There is really a problem. Like I say, with the state, we're subcontracted out. So essentially, we're state employees, but we're subcontracted out to do the work. So we don't operate. We only have hires that we control. We don't control the process. We don't control the budget lines. We don't control any of those things. And so one of the things that we're seeing is over the last 3 or 4 years, through some of the CRs and through some of the conversations, is if we're given 10 or 15 positions to essentially hire, if we lose 50 positions, we can only hire those 15. So we've gone from about 500 employees over the last 5 years down to 347. Adjudicators, we've gone from about 181 adjudicators down to 147. So that's unlike our state resources, we don't have the ability to create savings. For example, we have a couple field offices that we could potentially close to be able to redirect to hire additional staff. The feds won't allow us to do that. So when we create that particular capacity, it goes back to Maryland, and they decide how many hires we get. So sometimes you're in a catch-22. So if you have disciplinary issues and you want to, go through that particular process, you have to figure out, do I rather have somebody sitting in that desk that can process 2 claims a week or have no one, because you won't be able to backfill those particular positions. So that's kind of the catch-22, and that's kind of the things that, we do get a lot of calls. We definitely understand that it impacts DBHDD, it impacts our VR program, it impacts our rural hospitals, because they are relying on a lot of the individuals receiving that determination to be able to assist them as they move out of some of these hospitals, some of these locations. So we see it throughout. In meetings, I'm on conversations, but I think one of the toughest things is we have a really good partnership with our Atlanta regional team that helps us out, but the inability to be able to make decisions, it's really more of we can process the claims, but when it comes down to execution of the program, states are not given that authority to be able to make those adjustments.
Okay, so we need the congressmen to go more and the senators up in Washington.
And we're working with them. We've had a couple conversations with quite a few to understand the state concerns and how we can address that. And so we've had quite a few conversations, and I think it's going to be a positive conversation. But for us, we need a little bit more flexibility. We need the ability to hire. We need the ability to make decisions based on what we're seeing in Georgia. And I think if given that opportunity, I think we can actually resolve a lot of the issues that we're seeing, but we haven't been just given that ability to do that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
Representative Glaze.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your work, Executive Director Wells. I wanted to ask about the post-secondary institution.
Yep.
Are we connecting certifications to our high-demand careers? And if so, are we using any HOPE grant money in that space?
So I'll skip through to kind of answer your particular question there. Is for our Roosevelt Warm Springs institution here, I'll scroll through and then we can scroll back. You can see here on this particular side is we have looked at those high demand career fields. And if you fold through, like say go through on page number 10, we tried to do something internally to tie in what we're doing on campus. We didn't want to compete with TCSG. We didn't want to compete with University System of Georgia. We didn't want to compete with the high school. So what we did is we created and we did look at some of those CTAE type programs to elevate those. And because we're dealing with individuals that require a little bit more work, a little bit more attention, we've been able to create that nice niche to be able to allow those work with those teachers to get students into the classroom. And so as we've updated our program, and as you can see on this particular slide, is we made a tough decision in 2023 to move away from the previous model, which focused a little bit more on the independent living side and actually tried to focus on high demand career clusters and fields and industry recognized credentials. And so you can see there on that particular slide, we have really made a lot of adjustments, and you can see those increases. Right now, we're getting over 450 applications. So part of the bonds request that you saw earlier is trying to help us build capacity on campus so we can work with students and then migrate those students into a TCSG. We're seeing now students come to Roosevelt Warm Springs, and we'll talk about Cave Springs as well, and now they have different options. They become independent, they learn a little bit more, parents are starting to let them loose a little bit, and then they're making decisions right now to go into TCSG and to go into University System of Georgia because they have that taste, and now they have that confidence to go in. So we do that at Roosevelt Warm Springs. At Cave Springs, we're looking at expanding that. Over the last year, we've gone from 6 staff up to 20. I was just up there a couple days ago. And so we have dorm advisors. So now we're turning it into a residential, and we're doing a pilot program beginning March 16th for our blind and low vision population for them to have a residential facility to be able to learn how to operate cafeterias so they can go into the BEP program. So that's going to be new. It's probably going to be some trial and error. So we're doing a soft rollout, a lot of nuts and bolts and things that we have to do, but it's a beautiful campus and we're excited about that particular opportunity. But yes, and then to answer your second question, again, flipping around a little bit, I'll back up into the previous slide. Excuse me, sorry about that. If you look at the previous slide here, we did introduce the Bud McCall Scholarship. And what you see on that Bud McCall Scholarship there is we've gone from about 422 students in my first year here in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a pandemic in 2021, to over 620 students. And so we increased the how much we're paying. And so we do see a lot of our students going into higher ed. So they're staying a little bit longer. And so we're excited about that. So again, the participants are up. How much we're paying are up. We're also seeing, because we've expanded the opportunities for individuals removing financial need assistance, that we're seeing individuals that were in that donut area that probably didn't get HOPE or didn't get Zelle or anything like that. We're seeing those individuals being able to have the opportunity to come through GVRA if they have an IEP, 504, or a documented disability. So that's been helping tremendously as well.
And then second question to that is, do you see the connection where we're using now waivers for any of the students that are on campus?
So for us, because our rates now pretty much pay for most of the institutions. When they come through us, we're considered what we call we're pay of last resort. So we do look at any scholarship that an individual would receive, and then once those scholarships are applied, then our dollars kick in. So we necessarily don't have to worry about whether that individual needs those particular funding, because if you have a disability, you come through GVRA, you're going to receive funding for post-secondary if that's part of your what we call individual plan for employment.
And do we recruit with CTAE, CTI?
Yes.
On the annual, we're actually going in April doing the statewide competitions?
Yes. So we currently work with Ms. Mary Donahue, who's basically our CTI coordinator. She actually is our second largest provider, and she serves over I believe it's close to 2,000 students a year, and she's growing. I think last year she added over 50 retired school teachers. She's trying to get in every single school, and she's doing a marvelous job. So, Mary, if you're looking at this, I know you asked me to give you a shout out. Here you go. Yeah. So to kind of, get back through it, previous slide here. Sorry about that. This kind of just shows you kind of where we are. Over the last couple of years, we focused on network infrastructure. We focused on changing our policies. We focused on really, like I say, making a lot of changes to try to be a little bit more streamlined on the VR side. And so these are our VR numbers here. So again, we established an intake unit to help individuals get through the process a little bit quicker. In 2023 and 2024, we removed a lot of the red tape for individuals that have gone through VR over the past 20 or 30 years. A lot of those policies and procedures aren't there anymore. Again, the goal was to try to get individuals through the process a little bit quicker. Again, financial need was in place ever since the 1980s. So for us to basically in less than 3.5 years look at financial need and say, we don't need to do this anymore. Let's do a better job budgeting. Let's streamline our operations, and let's focus on the individual, not necessarily how much money a parent may have. And so that's helped. We've established our call center. We established a data unit. That's one of the things that I'm a numbers person. I do believe you have to make a lot of decisions based on where you are and where you want to be, how you can get things moving without having to call OPB and ask for additional dollars. And so we created a data unit to help us do some projections. And Mr. Donahue, all of this that we're talking about, I can't do it SSA. And so these are some of the things that given the opportunity to do with the SSA or DAS program, I think we can make it work. But I did want to point you out to the top right slide. What that shows is basically the number of individuals that we're serving. Currently, we're serving over 36,000 individuals with 250 less staff. 250 less staff compared to where we were before COVID. And so that alone is over almost a 26% increase there. And so you can see the number of services. We're offering more services. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner where we're leveraging more IT, moving to an online presence, investing in cloud database, moving forward, we're implementing a state-of-the-art case management system that we think is also going to help. But you can see on that bottom right-hand corner, all those changes and adjustments. That's a slide that shows you our authorizations. Authorizations is what we consider a leading indicator. That lets you know how many people are coming in the door, how many services that we are truly authorizing, and how many services are going to happen. And so you can see in 2021, we were authorizing less than 20,000. As of the beginning of this particular month, you can see that we've authorized over 90,000 services this particular year, which is, again, a leading indicator. Most people stay in our program about 661 to close to 850 days, so that's over 3 years where they're getting that training, they're getting those services, and they're moving forward. And so, as you can see, that's a lot of authorizations. That's a lot of work that our CFO, Ms. Mamta Patel, and our team is working on, and they do a really good job. And they work tirelessly trying to make sure we get through to be able to authorize those services for individuals. Our next slide, we just talked about it. This is the one that we were most proud of. Having to remove financial needs has given us an opportunity to increase the number of individuals that we're supporting through post-secondary. But then removing the financial need and also removing some of the red tape, we're actually also able, you'll see on that bottom right-hand corner, we're also able to pay for what we call personal care attendance. So students that maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago may not have been given that opportunity because of the extra care or assistance that they may have needed. We've been able to work with Georgia Tech, we've been able to work with Georgia Southern to be able to get individuals in the classroom. And so it's new for us. We're having to update our policies and procedures, but something like this has also helped individuals that, again, a couple years ago that we weren't assisting and we weren't helping. So we're proud of that. and then I'll quickly get through it so we can get to Social Security. But then you can also see some of our milestones. Again, 35% increase in counselor pay over the last couple of years. This past year with the $3,000 we were able to provide. Previous years, $5,000, previous years, $2,000. We also, when we streamline our operations, provide. And so now adjusting our requirements to come in, looking at the bachelor's degree instead of the master's degree, you can see going from $21,000 to nearly $60,000 for individuals that's walking in the door. And so that's been able to help us go from, as you can see there, 86 counselors the year that I got, just before I got in, up to 148. And we have about 15 more hires that we're making. And so we're moving the needle. 26% increase in individual serve, 122% increase in the student serve, going from 9,300 to 21,000 as of January of this year. That is a third, though. So we want to get to 50,000. That is a third of the number of individuals that DOE publishes for IEPs. I think that number is closer to 67,000. And then when you talk about a 504, you're looking at over 87,000 students that potentially will qualify for VR services. As you can see there, 363% in payments and in authorizations, and 85% increase in the payments that we have. So we're moving the needle. But one of the downsides is, even as you see the numbers as a whole, we still have gaps. We still have individuals that need those services. Sometimes we still need to focus on that day-to-day of that individual. So overall, the numbers look great, but we're still trying to focus on those individuals that are walking in the door that we may get it wrong that first time around. And then our next slide just gives you a summary of our Roosevelt Warm Springs campus that we talked about earlier, as well as our Cave Springs Center. And again, both services and both campuses require to be a VR client itself. So we are extremely excited, and we'll be able to hopefully report back on our services at Cave Springs Center. Again, was up there, was very excited to see a full house for the first time in like 5 years. So that was exciting. And then we'll go into our other program. Probably the biggest headache right now is our Social Security Administration program. And so this just provides you just a quick update of how the relationship works. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. If you look at the third bullet on the way down, is SSA establishes the policies, they establish the budget, and they monitor all IT infrastructure, which leaves us limited. The slide that you see to the right, that gives you an idea of where Georgia stands in the Southeast. We're the second largest when it comes down to claims, as you can see in that gray bar that's over the top, but we have less adjudicators than Kentucky, North Carolina, and we only have 16 more adjudicators than Alabama. You'll also see just our agency size. It's only, again, over 347 mentioned earlier compared to the others. So sometimes it can be a little bit taxing, but those are some of the things that we're working through to try to see how we can work through these last couple years. And our next slide just kind of gives you kind of the being in the rock and the hard place. When you look at staff, again, we're operating with 24% fewer staff over the last 5 years. We have 18% less adjudicators, but we've received 27% more cases over that same time. But when we look at the performance of our particular team that's in there, we see 23% more claims on average being clear. So with less people, we're doing more. 95 to 96% of our claims, we're accurately making it, we're making the right determination, but with less people, less staff, inability to make those particular decisions to move forward, we're seeing the impact. 157% increase in pending cases per month, 109% increase in average processing time, which gets you to that 390 days in total, but over 200 days in the backlog. And as you can see there, the chart just kind of shows that's Georgia stats and Georgia's numbers. And then our next slide, we typically just try to provide information in terms of, with the feds moving to an AI platform, what's the best way to be able to file those particular claims to be able to assist. Again, it's tough. We acknowledge that, but we've been working with our hospital association and trying to provide more information in terms of what are some of the things that we can assist with to try to get those claims through the process a little bit quicker. With that being said, that concludes my presentation for GVRA, and I'll yield my time back to the chairwoman.
Thank you. Thank you. Great updated information. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Start with Chairman Mathiak.
Mr. Wells, I'm impressed. You still have the energy that you had when you came here, so thank you.
Thank you
for keeping up and keeping your positive attitude. I sure appreciate it.
No problem. Just tell that to the staff to get those 3 o'clock emails before I go to the gym, so they they can speak to it, and so they check on me a lot because they know I'm 24/7, 365.
Yeah. Well, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff, whoever's out there.
Thanks, everyone. Yes, so Representative Oliver.
I am looking at page 5, your 10th slide, in relation to residential Cave Springs and Rome Springs. And you have a total for both, this is what I'm trying to understand if I read it correctly. You have 106 at both campuses?
Well, in terms of individuals that's on the campus itself. So we do provide what we call pre-employment transition services. So we have at our Cave Springs location, Polk County and our surrounding counties, they come there for a day. They may take part in ServSafe. They may take part in what we call soft skills training. So that is not included here. What I only provided was those individuals that are that are residential on campus. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm looking at the initials, I'm sure somewhere on here it tells me what the initials PREETS stands for. But
It's my fault. Pre-employment transition services. We call it PREETS for short. I think if you are an educator, most educators consider this soft skills training. But in the VR world, they call it pre-employment transition services. PREETS.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Great. Thank you. Representative Donahue.
Thank you. Let me ask you, is Robin Folsom here?
No, she's no longer with the agency.
So she's no longer. And I want to make sure that I crossed over that. And Carla Murphy?
She's here. Yep.
Okay, so good. And Houston Webb?
He's no longer with the agency.
So good. Okay. We covered 2 things I needed. But thank you very much. Thank you. That was all.
Great. Any other questions? Chris, thank you. Director Wells, thank you so much for your energy and for your staff and everybody that's working so hard. I know this is challenging. I know there are a lot of federal things that are a little bit in our way right now, and I just thank y'all for your perseverance to keep on trying, because this is such important work, and that we help others be able to work, for sure. I hope that maybe, I'm so excited, of course, to hear that Cave Spring is full for the first time in 5 years. That is fabulous news. I hope that maybe the committee can go see that, maybe Warm Springs too afterwards, but I'd certainly love to bring them after session when we catch our breath.
We'll be more than happy. I think you made a recommendation a couple years ago, and so because we have a beautiful kitchen up there, we're trying to look at culinary as an option. We've been looking at with the BP program, which focuses on cafeterias. We wanted to extend that. I think Georgia Northwestern has a culinary program up there, and so we're trying to figure out how we use that diploma track, which goes back to, instead of creating something new, if that partnership could be evaluated. But we think we have a jewel up there, and we've invested in the security. So if you go up there right now, it's going to be locked down. But we'll definitely make sure Mr. Greg Teams, he does a really good job. He's a retired superintendent, I think, from Polk County School, and so he retired. He was retired for one month. We got a recommendation, and he has come in, and over the last, I'll say 8 months, he's hired, he is energetic, he is ready to go, and so I just told him, whatever you need, I'm going to block and tackle. As long as you can keep that energy, I'm going to keep that energy as well. So he's doing a really good job. So I'm excited for you to be able to come out, for the committee to come out and meet Greg and the team.
Yeah, and to understand kind of the focus of both of those 2 campuses, I think would be really good for all of us. So just thank you. Thank you so much. You persevere. Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next. Oh, and I have to do this too. I have to give a shout out to Mary Donahue as well.
Yes.
She is great.
She is wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So next, we will hear from the Sexual Offender Risk Review Board from Executive Director Tracy Alvord.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and committee members. I really appreciate you having me. I'm Executive Director Tracy Alvord. And I think you're bringing that up. I gave you a binder. I have a lot. I'm very excited because this is the first year where you had blessed us with the budget that we currently have that is significantly more than what we have. And so that is, of course, personnel heavy. So our challenge was hiring a bunch of people this year to go through a bunch of sex offenders to get them classified. So I want to give you a little bit of information about what we do, kind of how we were putting that in place, what we were working on, and then the progress that we've made in the last 7 months. So what we do, it's not just an issue of identifying who's low risk, which would be level 1. Level 2 is moderate risk, and level 3 is a sexually dangerous predator. And of course, with each stage makes them more and more dangerous, and we're of course focused on protecting our communities. So we want to identify the highest risk sex offenders to ensure that they're being monitored in the best way possible. So we provide this information not just to go on the GBI registry, which is for our public. So our public members can look at that and they know who are in their neighborhood and they can identify who are the higher risk sex offenders. But we also are talking a lot to our stakeholders. So with Department of Community Supervision, that helps them know how to monitor them better. We work with the sheriff's departments, again, to help them know how to monitor them better. We talk with Department of Corrections as to whether people should be released from prison early or not be released early in their supervision. We talk to the judges, the prosecuting attorneys, the defense attorneys as to revocations and what individuals are presenting a risk and should not be in the community. And part of, just to kind of give you an idea, in the binder with the colors, if you go to the light blue tab, showing you kind of the work that we do in your binder, you can see one individual, he had been a school principal. And this is just a good example. I like to show our work because it really shows the difference between what a conviction looks like versus what the details are. He was convicted of aggravated child molestation, and that doesn't really give you a picture. As you can see, he had 8 victims total within that particular conviction. And he actually maxed out his sentence. So he went to prison, he got out with no supervision. So where SOAR falls in line with that is a lot of times the sheriff's departments will contact us and request details because they don't have the details. My investigators work really, really hard about getting all the details to make sure that everybody knows exactly what happened so they know how to really effectively monitor the individual. So that's one example. In the yellow tab, if you go to that, this is an example of an individual who moved to Georgia from Florida. And I'll tell you, approximately 40% of new sex offenders every month are coming from another state and moving to Georgia. And we're the lucky ones to have them here. And it is very, very difficult to get information from other states. Florida is a very good example. It's very hard for the sheriff's departments, for the police departments, for Department of Corrections and Department of Community Supervision to get any of those details. So here's a good example of an individual who has 4 separate convictions out of the state of Georgia, out of the state of Florida, who now lives with us and is not being monitored through supervision because he's in Georgia instead of Florida. Probably came to Georgia hoping he'd come off the registry, which will not happen because he's been designated as a predator. And the sheriff's department's providing them with this information, which they would not have these kind of details, will allow them to know how dangerous he is and know how to make sure to really be watching over him. And I just gave you one more example. The last example shows an individual who's been charged and convicted several times in the state of Georgia. And again, this is a situation in giving a lot of information to our stakeholders, our law enforcement people, even mental health, even other states. I've had other states who a Georgia sex offender moves to their state and they ask us for information to know how to monitor this person. And in this particular situation, you can see with all the details, he has numerous prepubescent victims. And so he's very, very dangerous. And this report, we provide anyone who asks us for this information. So if we had a nursing home facility, ask us about a particular offender because he had more than one conviction of a sex offense. People tend to assume that someone who's going into a nursing facility is low risk, and in fact, that's not necessarily the case. The individual this state asked us about was extremely, actually very, very dangerous. He had committed child molestation and rape cases and was very likely very dangerous to the individuals in the nursing facilities who could not defend themselves. And so then they knew to make sure that they could protect the individuals in that nursing facility even though he had to be there. So provide them with a lot of information. So just kind of tell you that now with the funds that you have provided us from last year, and I know the governor is still recommending that, and I appreciate that, and I'm excited about that, that we can do even more of these cases to ensure the safety of our communities. And so if we go to the PowerPoint, which I've not used this, so I'm not sure how to, oh, there, okay. So this is the governor's recommendation, and if you go to the next slide, we're looking at about 25,000 sex offenders on the registry currently in the state of Georgia, give or take. We receive approximately at least 100 new sex offenders every single month. And again, about 40% of those are new out-of-state sex offenders. The others are being newly sentenced sex offenders in our court systems, and then those who are being released from our Department of Corrections facilities. And we have approximately, if we look through the end of June of next year, about 7,500 backlogged cases. And when we look at the percentages of what we've had since 2006 being classified as predators and level 2s, and predators and level 2s are certainly our most concerning sex offenders. We know already that they're high risk. We know already they need to be monitored effectively and very strongly. And so we're looking at 32% with our level 2s and 11% of our sexually dangerous predators. So it tells you approximately who have not been leveled yet, and we're working on getting them leveled, which is very, very important. In the next slide, I just want to give you, now I get to do the fun things and show you the progress that we've made. So when I heard that we were getting the funds, I immediately started hiring people, or looking at hiring people, to start July 1st. And our goal initially, so we have had some obstacles. My initial goal was I was going to hire 8 full-time clinical evaluators total, and then approximately 15 part-time clinical evaluators. My thought at the time was this is a very, very unique field, and there's not a lot of people that want to do it, let alone know how to do it. So that is an obstacle in and of itself. And so my thought was we have DCS-approved treatment providers who have the specialty. So I was going to kind of seek them out and say, listen, you want to do some part-time work and you can do your full-time work. That did not work. I was hoping that it would. So initially, I got my 8 full-time clinical evaluators started immediately right on July 1st. I did have 3 part-time clinical evaluators. I only take you from the beginning to current because we fluctuate throughout with the various employees. So we would hire, we would lose people, we would hire, we would lose people. So we were constantly hiring, trying to train them, and then constantly losing people because they didn't know how to manage working more than one job, working SORB and what that really looked like. Because when you see the pretty reports that I showed you, which is about 5 pages, that's really between 100 to 1,000 pages we're reviewing to create that 5-page report. So the investigators and the evaluators work really, really hard to get through that, and I think people come in not realizing it's that extensive. And so there was a lot of part-time just doesn't work. So as I was going through, realized part-time employees just is for the most part not working. So what I started doing was combining part-time positions to full-time positions, which is definitely working better. And you can see as of now, we are fully staffed. We have 8 part-time investigators, 13 full-time clinical evaluators, and 9 part-time clinical evaluators. When we first started, before we received the funds, we had 3 part-time investigators and 4 full-time evaluators. So you can see the tremendous change in that, and this is going to show you the numbers and the changes already. We've had some obstacles in that we were displaced from the agricultural building the very beginning of August, when we're hiring all these people and trying to train all these people. And we are very, very blessed that we've had some of our stakeholders out in Cobb County who have provided us with a training facility at the Sheriff's Department. We're very, very lucky to have that. And also, I'm very lucky to have staff that are excellent in what they do and being able to train even though we've been displaced and don't have a lot of access to what we need to really effectively train. And I think that's probably made it a little difficult for our part-time folks to really kind of incorporate the information they need to have. But my folks have worked around it, they've done what they had to do, and they've done a great job of it. So you'll see with the next slide, with our investigation statistics. So in FY24, we're completing 87 cases a month in investigations. And what that means is I have investigators who compile all the criminal documentation. So understand, we collect more than just the sex offenses. We collect any criminal documentation that's related to risk. So any violent offense, simple batteries, simple assaults, aggravated batteries, also anything that could be sexual, such as contributing to delinquency of a minor, and those types of offenses. Criminal trespassing could be a sexual offense. So they collect all that documentation. So this is the part that I'm talking about, is them completing that case file to then go to the evaluator. So as of the end of January of 31st, and again, this was training, we have a total of 8 part-time investigators at this time, which is at full capacity. We have increased the total numbers by 35%. We anticipate, by the time I see you next year, to go up 85% with that. So we're very, very excited about that. They've been working really hard to complete those cases. I'm even more excited, but of course it all comes together, regarding the next page, which is our evaluation statistics, because this is the end product. This is the end product where our board members vote, our evaluators create the report, our board members vote to determine if they're level 1, 2, or predator, and then the community then knows what this individual is and how we protect the community. And you can see that FY24, we're completing 35 cases a month. As of the end of February, we had a board meeting mid-February, so this goes up to that board meeting. We had completed 56 cases a month during that time, which increases our rate by 60%. And then my plan, our hopes, is that by next year, we're going to be going up to 220 cases a month, which is 529% from where we were. We could not be doing this without the extra funds that you all have blessed us with. So the evaluators have been working really, really hard. My staff has been working really, really hard. The investigators, everybody's been working really hard to get us to where we need. And in the next slide, we're looking at our backlog, which is kind of the end game, where our goal is to eradicate the backlog and then get to the point where we're able to classify sex offenders as we're getting them versus trying to take care of this backlog. And based on what I presented last year and where we currently are and anticipate being, we should be at that 5-year mark just like we had discussed. So far so good. Things seem to be going really great, and I'm proud of my staff and very excited to give you this update.
Thank you. Yeah, wow, that's right. I heard it up here a couple of times. That is great. Thank you for your focused work. It's obviously paying off. Great investment. So let's see, we're going to start off with Representative Sain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, thank you for the work you do in general and the work your team does. I was oblivious to it, I think, until my 3rd year in the legislature when we worked on a sexual offense risk review related bill. And I wanted to highlight it. Now, for sake of clarification, I know we'd made the investment, but is there a request at this point to increase it further, or is it to stay the same from the previous increase?
So that would be lovely, but I will say that to stay the same as what y'all have provided as we continue to get balanced out.
Deal with the growth
Yes.
adjustments.
Yes.
But when it comes to this backlog getting reduced, because it looks great on paper, but is it not fair to say, and it's a true, sincere question, because I can't remember the details, but Merriam's Law, which I think everyone in this committee voted on, that case that we named that risk review modification to, there was a backlog in that perpetrator's risk leveling. Was that not the case?
That is correct.
So this truly has an impact on one, but many on the potential risk of some heinous crimes. And I want to thank you for taking the investment this committee made and truly acting on it quickly, swiftly, and with a major hole to the south of our capital. It's very evident y'all had a move throughout the process, but it's very evident you've taken that investment seriously and acted quickly on it. And truly from the bottom of my heart, and I know this sympathy is shared, thank you for that work and for that meaningful change to that backlog.
Thank you.
Great, good words. Representative Cameron.
Thank you. Because of a lot of the mental health issues in my district, I spend a lot of time in the jails, and what y'all do is phenomenal. It's hard work, some difficult, heartbreaking work, but I appreciate what you do. Some people think I need to stay in the jail, but I don't. but thank you for what you're doing, because this is very, very hard work, and to continue to do it and do it at the level you do it is really appreciated. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cameron. Representative Chairman Mathiak.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Let's go back to the staff and part-time, full-time issues. Is there a burnout level that you're dealing with too? I can't imagine dealing with this subject matter for a long period.
What is very interesting in this area, because I've been in this area for over 30 years and working directly with sex offenders, is it's one of those areas that you can either do it or you don't. And so what we find is if you're in this field and it's your passion, you're going to last a really long time, and the burnout actually is not too bad. If this is not your passion, burnout is almost within the first year.
Gotcha. I'm impressed too with your numbers, and I'm excited for you because I know you've worked hard, and I know your staff's worked hard. I had another question. I can't remember what it was. Never mind. Thank you.
Well, we have another question, so if it comes back to you, feel free to touch that button again. Representative Glaze.
Thank you again, Chair Lady. Thank you so much for the great work that you guys are doing. I just want to say that so many more children will be safe and will continue to be safe as you move towards your goal. It is just honorable work. It's a great work that we need in this state, and we're so grateful for what you're doing with the budget that you have in your team. So again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for participating in our ability to do that, because if it wasn't for you, we could not. So we really appreciate it, and we are very excited about this mission. So thank you.
Representative Mathiak.
I remembered. Okay, the 3 levels 1, 2, 3. Is there a rubrics, or how? I mean, you said that goes before the board after your investigators have put everything together. So is there a rubrics that your board looks at that to?
It kind of, sort of, in a sense. So what happens is the investigators collect all the criminal documentation that is related to risk by research. The evaluators then review that information, pick out all the research-based information. So, for example, those with male victims tend to be higher risk to sexually reoffend, just as one example. They then look through all the community supervision behavior and prison behavior, because their behavior within the system is very important, obviously, and there's risk factors associated with that. So, for example, an individual who is having contact with children who's not supposed to have contact with children would increase their risk. So they look at that. They also look at treatment information. So how are they doing with polygraph examinations? How are they complying with treatment? Are they showing a desistance in their sexual deviant behavior? And so they take that into consideration. They put it into a report. There are risk assessments. They're called the Static 99 and the Static 202, which are, there's revised versions. And then there's also the Stable 2007, which is a dynamic risk factor. So you have static risk factors that are prior to committing a set, at the time they're caught, what were the factors, and then new factors such as when they're under community supervision, which is why we had a law change where prior to them being considered to be removed from the registry, they have to be assessed again because we want to make sure they haven't re-engaged in some high-risk behaviors. Then there is a numerical form that we go through based on those factors, and that's a baseline for risk. And then based on other factors that could increase or decrease that risk is taken into consideration. That's put in our report, which you would see with the examples, and then that goes to our board members. They read it throughout the month, then the board members meet, they discuss the cases if they have concerns, and then they make a decision if they want to agree with the recommendation or if they want to depart from that recommendation.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you, and I agree. I hope next year you're back with even better numbers.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon. I want to remind everyone that there is a sign-up sheet here on the front table if you are here to speak after we have one more presentation, and then if you want to, we'll pick that up and we'll go through those who have signed up. So our next presentation is from the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, Executive Director Darcy Robb.
Hey, Martha.
Okay, we get the line labels.
Pass it to you.
Okay. Oh my God.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. We will try to be fairly short and sweet and engaging because I know it's been a long day for all of us. I'm Darcy Robb. I'm the Executive Director of GCDD. And with me are Harry Nelson, my Deputy Director, in case anybody has in-depth budget questions. This is not Harry Nelson. He is, okay, thanks. And also Ariel Edwards on my staff, who I wanted y'all to see Ariel's face because Ariel is our new person who leads our work with our IPSI programs. Also, my members Martha Haythorne, Jessica Cowell, and Brooke Kubik will be rounding out the presentation today. Martha actually has another engagement, so she's going to kick us off before turning it back to me.
All right. Hi. So my name is. Oh, sorry.
No,
okay.
You're good.
My name is. Okay, hold on. My name is Martha Haythorne, and I am the Vice Chair of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. I'm a graduate from the Georgia Tech Excel Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Program, and I work here in the Capitol in the Senate. This January, I got waiver funding from DBHDD. Here's how it has changed my life. So, I am currently living in Midtown at the Standard Atlanta, and I have someone who comes and helps me with independent living skills, and I'm really practicing with with my fine motor skills and practice in at-home skills so I can be more of a functioning adult in my own living space. And I also am looking to find supports for transportation and getting to work. Currently right now, I am taking motor into work or I take Lyft. And I also And I also love to work, period. I've been wanting to work here in the Georgia Capitol since high school. So being here, working in a place like this is really going to show me what it means to do what you guys do and what it means to actually aim high and advocate for inclusivity and for all kinds of like developmental disabilities or other populations to do something good, to be different, to really, really highlight the message that it's okay to be different. It's a process. It's not always easy, but I'm here to say that with everything that I've been through with living independently and working on being an adult, that with having a waiver like this through Medicaid, it will really develop more of an adult in me and really create more inclusivity and bring a lot of meaning into my life. And I would love to have the money to be able to really make that happen to all people like me, to make it higher, not lower.
Yes, wow. Oh my God. Martha, what a lovely, lovely job. That was just fantastic. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. Let me ask you one question.
Yeah.
Are you still a student or have you finished? Are you post-student?
So, I have big news. I graduated last year in 2024, my first ever college graduation, and it was the day of a lifetime. I got to wear the graduation cap and gown. I got to hug the president of Georgia Tech, and the best part is I had my first ever graduation party for college, and it was a party of a lifetime.
Why didn't you invite me?
Well,
I'm kidding.
thank you for sharing that with us.
When you were a student,
Were
you here before?
When you were a
Yes.
student? Yes.
I remember.
Yes.
For advocacy days at the Capitol, yeah, because I'm not known for, with these guys in particular, I come with them to the advocacy days, and I will speak up about waivers, about anything related to disability, because when I start talking about things like this, I can't stop.
Well, I know that every day you're adding a lot to the ante room over in the Senate, from what I hear. And Senator Eccles was here earlier with you and had to, I think, leave and get to a meeting. So he texted me. So I've been looking forward to hearing you speak. Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
I want you to know, I think you said that that you have to be somewhere. You have another commitment. So if you feel like you need to step out, you are welcome to do that, and we are just so grateful that you were here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. All right, I'm not going to top the opening act. I don't even need to say anything now, do I? In all seriousness, though, amazing job, Martha. I think Martha just showed us better than I ever could what happens when we invest in people. All right, but on to a little bit of geeky stuff and a little bit of numbers. All right, it's late, we're all tired. Y'all know our mission. Do good things, social and policy for folks with developmental disabilities and their family to be included. That's what we do. We're an independent state agency. I always think it's important to remind you all of that. We're governed by a council of members, so that's very unique about us. Martha, Jessica, Brooke, my other members, they actually make our governance decisions. And that's the really unique insight I think we can bring you, is it's coming from over 60% of our members having a disability themselves or a family member with a disability. Because we are federally, the legislation that established us is federal. So as you would expect, about 70% of our funds are federal in kind. All right. So just taking a quick look at our state funds on the tracking sheet, I believe this is the bottom of page 2. You're going to see something there that you're not seeing in other agency budgets this year, and that is COLA funds. Now, the reason you're seeing that is because most of our staff did not receive them last year. Since I've started this job, I've learned that historically state employees whose salaries are federally funded do not get COLAs. And at GCDD, that is the majority of our employees. So we did not receive the state funds for the COLAs back in 23 or 24. However, we were able to make that up and give those to our staff out of our federal funds. In 2025, there was just not a fiscally responsible way for us to do that. I want to publicly thank my staff, as I have in private, but for their grace in accepting what was a disappointing situation for them, that they did not get COLAs when, well, one did, but because of how our funding works, but the majority did not get COLAs at that time. I did raise that point with OPB this fall, and I am delighted that the governor and OPB proposed to support those COLAs in this year's budget. So again, please know this is not a double dip for my staff. This is last year's COLA this year, and we're so very grateful. So if you take a look at our current state funds there, we get $786,942. And as per legislative intent, all but about $41,000 goes to inclusive post-secondary education. Inclusive post-secondary education programs, like the one Martha attended, that allows for students with intellectual disabilities to attend college at typical colleges and universities with their peers. The big news, or some of the big news for this year, is we have a new inclusive post-secondary education program, and it is our first one at a private institution. Berry College opened their doors this fall. They have had incredible support from the campus community. I am very proud to tell you that all 3 of their inaugural students are not only in internships, all 3 of them are in paid internships. Yeah, not too bad for your first year of college. I have been really impressed with those students, with their peer mentors, and the program founder, Dr. Michelle Haney. I'm really excited to get to work with them and get to know them better, and for y'all too as well. So out of the IPSI funds that come through us, $600,000 of that flows directly through us out to the 10 programs and the consortium that supports all of us. The remainder is for us, and that goes for the staffing and the support for IPSI. So I have to thank the members of this committee, you all, for your ongoing support of IPSI. There is no way the programs would be as big and as robust without you. And while not directly through this committee, I very much thank you for your support of the legislation back in 2023 that created IPSI grants. And those, essentially, it's kind of like HOPE dollars, but it's for IPSI students because they cannot access those HOPE dollars. Okay, we had a request to share some specific data points with the committee, so we've got those for you. You can see here the number of students enrolled over the past 3 academic years, currently up to 155. It is also broken down by the year in school. I will admit that I made a mistake in the math, which my new staff, Ariel, kindly corrected for me. And so it's actually 54 first years, 57 second years, 28 third, and 16 fourth. That is a lot of 54 first year, 57 second year, and then the slide is correct, 28 third year and 16 fourth year. Now, the thing you're probably going to notice is that's a lot of first and second year students. The reason for that is that most of the programs are 2-year programs, more like an associate's degree model. All right, this is the fun statistic. You all asked where are the students working or interning. The logos on this slide represent a partial list, and it's partial because we could not fit more logos onto the slide. As of the last count on February 18th, we confirmed that there are 100 students currently working or in internships. I say at least 100 because as we were looking at the data, we realized that we don't think some schools accounted for students in unpaid internships. So we're going to do a second dive and try to get that. I will also tell you that there are times when a semester starts and an internship might fall through. So it takes some time. But right now we have at least 100 currently working or currently interning. They will all have multiple jobs or internships before their IPSI programs conclude. We pulled together just a couple of alumni stories just to spotlight what happens after IPSI. This is Max Champion, who went to Eagle Academy at Georgia Southern. He was actively in Greek life while he was there. He graduated a couple of years ago. And most IPSI students do not matriculate into college. By definition, when they begin an IPSI program, they could not matriculate the typical way. But we do have a few that during their IPSI program, their skills develop quite rapidly, and they are able to matriculate. So Max has been accepted into Georgia Southern to pursue his associates, and he's been hired by Eagle Academy as a mentor. Our second of three highlights is Nadia Osby. She's been in the working world a bit longer, since 2020. And she interned at the GSU Athletics Marketing Department. She's been promoted to a security team manager at Mercedes-Benz. She actually leads a team of 10 people and makes $18 an hour. And finally, we have a dog. We have Burke Lyle, who graduated back in May of 2022. Burke is a commentator on sports radio. He created his own podcast of local high school athletes, and he's currently employed by UGA Athletics as a class checker and a fan-gineer. Last thing about IPSI is we're planning for the future. I'm really excited to tell y'all that we've just launched a new project that is led by Dr. Daniel Crimmins. Dr. Crimmins has been nicknamed the godfather of IPSI in this state. His roots go back about 15 years before we even had an IPSI program. Dr. Crimmins, along with Ariel Edwards, our staff, he's going to be recommending a formula for distribution of the IPSI grant dollars across the different university settings. So not the dollars that we receive. Dr. Crimmins actually created that formula for us some years ago, but looking at the IPSI grant dollars to see if there's any guidance or tweaking needed by setting. He's also going to be outlining strategies for IPSI expansion over the next 10 years. And finally, something I'm very excited about all of it, but I'm particularly excited, he's going to be providing some suggestions on long-term program models that would support all students with developmental disabilities. IPSI is wonderful, and we have heard that over the years, and we've seen that. But a thing that I'll tell you we've also heard, and I'm guessing that many of you have too, is that IPSI is not the right fit for all young people with developmental disabilities. And yet we know they can all succeed in the right environment with the right supports and transition to adult life. So that is something that I'm very excited to see the recommendations on and see where we're going next. All right, so we're going to go from something our state does very well into an area where we've got some work to do. So this is a picture of Georgia's fiscal effort into the adult IDD population. Now, in an ideal world, we want to see all these bars about even, and that would indicate that no matter where a person with DD lives in the United States, the state is committing about the same amount of support. This graphic shows our state's fiscal effort, which is defined as the investment per $1,000 of personal income. So, unfortunately, we are not investing enough in Georgians with DD. We are the third lowest. You can see there in the southeast, and we're well below the national average. I know this is not news I'm sure that you want to hear, but this is where we are right now. We're making strides. We've still got work to go. And I especially point this out because, of course, unfortunately, that has negative consequences for Georgians with IDD and their families. I think sometimes we don't hear as much about this from a state agency perspective because we don't see these challenges concentrated. Like, you're not going to see this concentrated in a prison or concentrated in a state hospital. When folks with IDD don't get services they need, for the most part, that's something that they bear out on their own or with family support. So we see it in a different way. We see it in your constituents across your districts. But frankly, a lot of them feel as if they are struggling alone. All right, so this chart shows us a picture of the last 12 years. The tall blue bars that you can see from left to right go from 2014 to 2025. That's the number of folks on the wait list for an hour comp waiver. So we've been between 6,000 and 9,000 for these 12 years. The dark blue bars on the very bottom show the newly funded waivers. Now that ranged from 75 to 250 going up to 2022. That bar gets larger in fiscal 23 and 24. That's when we had 500 and 513 waivers. Last year, we received 100 waivers, but of course, that was also the year of investment in the now and comp provider service rates. And y'all saw, I really liked in Commissioner Tanner's presentation, as the rates have gone up, the turnover has gone down. So that's really great because our system is now more robust and can support more people. The light green bars on top of the dark blue, of course, that's the attrition, with approximately 400 folks a year rolling off. So we thank the commissioner and his team for their transparency on the attrition. Unfortunately, as you can see here, the attrition plus the new waivers, it really hasn't budged the number on that list. It's actually increased since last year. So a very fair question at this point would be, okay, Darcy, how many waivers do we need? Well, we have 7,900, a little over 7,900 on the waiting list, which is an increase of 600 people since this time last year. I do want to emphasize that you have to remember there are very stringent requirements in this state to even be eligible for an hour comp waiver. We have close to 250,000 people with a developmental disability. A much smaller portion will qualify for a waiver. Because our waiver criteria, you have to have the most significant impact of your disability. Now that said, it is true, not everyone on this list needs a waiver right now. A benchmark that's frequently used is for most folks, now not everybody, but most folks, you're going to want that waiver to pick up as they finish high school. Because you're going to want them to transition into the community, you're going to want them to start their career, you're certainly not going to want a parent to have to quit their job and support them. So typically we look at that end of high school as the time when we'd want a waiver to kick in. We do know, and this is from data that DBHDD did share with me, that 68% of the folks on the waiting list are 21 or older. So that's about 5,200 folks who are out of high school or in some cases years beyond. So that's a pretty good approximation for how many waivers we would think, yes, we would need now. I also think it's important to note, and this is something that came out as part of the Guidehouse process that I spoke to you about last time and Commissioner Tanner spoke about, folks on the waiting list and their families do not know their own needs score. So that, I think, is an interesting point and one that we'd certainly want to work on in our system. An issue that was pointed out by Guidehouse was the need scores do not account for the urgency of need and also unmet need. It's not accounting for how that need is being met. So again, if I have a parent who's dropped out of the workforce to support me, that's considered a met need, but I know that's not the way that we would want those needs to be met. So that's a process that, certainly I think we're going to see some work on. But I just say that to you because we need to bear in mind that unfortunately, just because someone has a low need score, that doesn't necessarily translate into, oh, they don't need a waiver. And of course, a waiver allows people to live in communities instead of institutions, right? You don't hear us talk about bed count because it's a bit of a different issue. Bed count is more institutional. You're thinking more of a hospital, a skilled nursing facility. For folks getting the NOW waiver, that's not residential. That's just going to be what they're doing during the day. For folks getting a comp waiver, it could help them be in their own apartment or a host home or a group home, but just a bit of a different concept. So the last thing I wanted to do was walk y'all through a return on investment case study that we put together for you, and then I'm going to have my members close us up. All right, so this young lady that you see is Mia, and Mia receives a comp waiver and has for a number of years now. So we wanted to break down what does Georgia get for the investment in Mia's waiver. Well, first and foremost, it supports Mia's career. She has worked for 12 years at St. Mary's Hospital over in the Athens area. She works 25 hours a week. And of course, because Mia works, she pays income taxes. She also has a job coach and a support coordinator who also pay income taxes. So that's money that comes back into our economy. Because Mia works, her family can work. Her mother has a good paying job and paid over $30,000 in taxes last year. The waiver pays for staff support. Once again, those staff pay taxes, so, obviously we're seeing a theme here. The waiver keeps her healthy with minimal health care costs, and it allows her to spend her income in the community. So breaking down the math, Mia's waiver, that is returning about $40,000 into the economy, and that's about 60% of the funding she gets for the comp waiver. Then you've got the $30,000 that her mother is paying in taxes. And plus you've got community contributions like her Sunday school class, her bowling team, friendships with the nurses that she works with. And so when we look at the ROI to the economy, we're actually getting more out of Mia's waiver than we're putting into it. So I just offer that to you as, that's not always the case with an investment, and I can't, I don't have the number breakdowns on every waiver, but just to show the positive impact. Before we wrap it up, all right, so bearing in mind that recommendation, this is why we're recommending approximately 2,400 new NOW comp waivers into the fiscal 26 budget. Now, I understand that it may be the position of DBHDD that they would have concerns about supporting such a high number of new waivers. While I hear that, I would also argue that we have known for a long time, at least a dozen years, that Georgia needs more waivers. And I would also argue that a state budget needs to be driven by the needs of the people of Georgia. The needs of the state agency and the build out of the state agency should follow that. And of course, this is the number that was recommended by the bipartisan Senate Study Committee a few years ago. $65 million would get us approximately 2,400. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brooke Kubik and then Jessica Cowell to close us out.
Thank you, Darcy. Hi, thank you guys so much for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Brooke Kubik, and my husband and I are parents of 5 children, 4 of whom have intellectual and developmental disabilities of varying levels. One also has pretty severe physical disabilities. I am just here today to kind of urge you guys to increase funding for Medicaid waivers. And I think that Darcy did a phenomenal job going through the need. And but sometimes it's really difficult if you don't, I wish I could have all of my children here in front of you so that you could see, how it directly impacts a family. Sometimes it's very difficult if you don't live that life to connect with it. Like I said, 4 of my children have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and right now, we're in that process on that waiver wait list with one of them. He is a junior in high school, and he's brilliant. As far as his intellectual developmental disability, he is very high functioning. His physical disabilities, however, are limiting him. He scored a perfect ACT score and a perfect SAT score. So to say that he's brilliant would be an understatement. He makes me look like an idiot, and I was a research chemist at CDC. So he is being heavily recruited by Georgia Tech, UGA, MIT, Harvard, Yale, and so forth. But without that waiver, I cannot afford to send him to college by himself because he would need caregiver supports. And so that's unfortunate because Max is a sweet and kind child, and his youngest sister, her name is Mamie. She is 7 years old, and she has a very rare genetic condition, and she will be with me the rest of her life. And Max told his guidance counselor one day, she asked him why he was so driven. Max, why are you so driven to be the valedictorian, to be the best, to be such a high achiever? And he told her, because 2 reasons. Number one, I want to be a neuroengineer to change the lives of children like myself that have neuromuscular diseases, to make, accessible services easier for them, exoskeletons, better quality of life. And he said, and number 2, my parents are old and they're not going to live forever. And my sister, my youngest sister has a severe disability. And while I probably won't be able to care for her physically, my oldest sister will be an artist. True, she's going to art school. And she won't make a lot of money. So I'm going to need to support them and take care of Mamie for the rest of her life. And the thing that makes me the most sad, it touches me as a parent because I think that, to have that kind of compassion for your siblings and to have that kind of love is beautiful. But it also makes me sad to think that that financial burden falls on him because he is so afraid that by the time she ages out of the system, that there won't be a waiver for her, that she won't be able to get that waiver that would provide the necessary care and services for her to continue to live a wonderful life well after her dad and I are gone. So, like many parents of children with disabilities, we have faced significant financial and emotional challenges. It's very difficult, even if you have Medicaid. We have a deeming waiver. Even if you have that, it's difficult to access services, and it doesn't pay for everything. And so the out-of-pocket, especially when you're talking about the physical side, certain therapies that were beneficial for Max, we took out a second mortgage. And I stepped away from my really high-paying chemistry job at the CDC, and, I became an adjunct professor part-time. So that was a huge loss of income. And, I'm not alone, and I feel like I'm the lucky person because I can navigate the system, and I do have that education level that I understand how to navigate. But I also for many years have sat in the Marcus Autism Center, and I have sat in that break room and kind of taken it upon myself to, I like to talk. And the stories that I've heard and what the challenges that people have faced, I can tell you that my friend, Mrs. Wallace, she has a grandson that she adopted, and his name is Jaden. And Jaden is 13 years old, and he has severe intellectual and developmental disabilities. And Mrs. Wallace is 72, and she struggles to take care of him, and he is on the waiver wait list. And she's at the point, I see her often, and she cries and says, I can't do it anymore. I don't know how I'm going to be able to keep him at home. If Jaden goes to an institution, that's going to cost the state anywhere between $140,000 and $200,000 annually. And because he's a juvenile, likely he'll go out of state. But if we could provide that waiver so that she could get some home and community-based care, some home and community-based services, that would cost significantly less, anywhere between $30,000 and $70,000. So to me, it's a no-brainer, to fund these waivers, to keep these families together. No one wants to see their child be institutionalized because they can't afford to care for them. And it's heartbreaking. And she's not alone. People have, lose their houses. They take out second, third mortgages. I know you've heard the stories. I know that, my fellow parents with disabilities have been here and spoken to you about the sad stories. But going back to the numbers, because I am a chemist and I am a numbers person, I started thinking, I looked at the budget that was released, and we've got approximately $11 billion as undesignated funds. And I know that Governor Kemp did earmark about $2.7 million of those for various things. And if we were to fund 68%, those 68% of the waivers that were high school age and above, then that would be $163.2 million. If you take that $11 billion and you subtract the $2.7 million that's earmarked, you're still looking at right about $8 billion left in undesignated funds that is still sitting there, and that's not including the rainy day. So to me, healthcare, keeping families together, keeping children and adults out of institutions, it's a no-brainer for our state, and it should be nonpartisan. I mean, it should be a bipartisan effort to keep these families together. I think what Jess will show you when she talks to you is that most of these individuals can work and can contribute to the workforce that will then contribute back to our tax-paying base. So I appreciate you letting me talk to you. And thank you so much for your consideration and the important work that you guys do. And I hope and pray that in the future that when my children grow up and they thrive, and that my youngest has a waiver, and that she goes through an IPSI program, and that she is one of those success stories that Darcy can sit here in 30 years and talk about, that she's receiving funding. And thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you for sharing your story. Yeah, thank you for being a good mother. One of the most important jobs anybody can ever do, actually. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Hello. Thank you for having me, for giving me time to speak to you today. I'm Jessica Cowell. I've come up from Columbus, Georgia. And I know that when we think about what these waivers are for and what they do, we think about how they help the special needs of different individuals. And they do that, and that's wonderful. But I want to also help you to see that they also help provide for very basic needs that all humans have. And that's the need to feel like we have a purpose and the need to feel like we belong in our community and in our world. When people have access to these waivers, they have access to get out and work, to meet people, to be seen and heard. And sometimes when people don't meet people like us, they don't understand that we're people too. Because we're full, whole people who have dreams and hopes and who want to be out in the community and who want to provide for ourselves in some ways. We don't want to just be the person that our family worries about how they're going to take care of. We want them to know that we can be okay. Both of my parents have passed, and I have siblings who I love very much, but they have their own families. And I want my family to know that I can be okay. We have at our church a lady who celebrated her 80th birthday on Sunday. She also has a developmental disability, and we both have people who bring us to church every week. She used to work with helping to clean the church before she retired, and when we had the birthday party for her Sunday, there was so much love in that building for her because we connect with people. And I'm currently on the session at that church, and it's a lot of work, but it does make me feel like I'm doing something. And these waivers can give people that. They can give people a reason to wake up and keep going. We talked about how many beds were needed for people with mental health issues. And I'm not saying having a waiver will cure having a mental health issue, but I am saying having a reason to get up and get dressed and do something every day, that helps. It helps fight depression so much. So I think I'm going to leave you with a quote. Shakespeare said, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players." We're just asking you to give as many of us as you can the chance to play our part. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your courage to come share your story with us. You did a lovely job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Representative Glaze.
I am a big crybaby. The best job I've ever done in my life, outside of being a mom, was to work with my students. And the best job I get to do now. And I'm so grateful for our chair lady to sit in this committee and to sit and listen. And the one word I'll leave with is we need this kind of love to be inclusive. And I love the fact that you talked about having purpose. And that has pricked my heart, and I'm so grateful today to hear from each of you. And I hope that we'll get to do more. And again, I'm so grateful for our chair lady, who has one of the biggest hearts I've seen since I've been here.
Now you're going to make me cry. which is not hard to do either. I want to say a couple of things. I want you to know how much we wish we could fund every single now and comp waiver. Always. Always. It's a large topic of discussion, and it has been for the 13 or so years that I've worked on this component of the budget. There isn't a member here or any that are not with us today that don't feel that way. There is a challenge in looking at the dollars and seeing an amount there that is there today, because a now and comp waiver is not a one-time investment. It has to be there to continue throughout the life of that person. We also have to have providers, which is a huge challenge. One of the hardest conversations I've had is with someone who got a waiver and couldn't find the services they need. So it is such a balancing act, and we are working with the department, with their ability, we're working with the workforce, and we're working with our hearts to try to help. So to that I would say you are heard, and it matters. And we will again, when we come together in the days ahead, figure out how to do as many as we possibly can. I'm well aware that the Senate will do the same thing, and we will continue to work toward that effort. Thank you. Thank you. Your stories matter. They always will. I'm sorry that it is hard, and I'm sorry we can't just wave that wand and say, here is all of the money to make it work out. So that on the waivers. I do have a couple of other things here before I call on Representative Donahue in just a moment, I think. But I want to say that I am concerned about some things in Ypsi. And I've had parents reach out to me. The day here was wonderful. The students, it's one of my favorite days of the year when those young people come and advocate, and they are so excited because they are genuine, real college students, and it really matters. I have wanted that for every single person and known how many people can do it. I am concerned about the third of people that are not in internships. I am. That's because that is one of the main reasons those parents are also paying a lot of money, even when they have help to attend the college. If their child has not even been interviewed, which is what I hear around, if they are not having opportunities to work, if they are perhaps in some other situations that were not at all what they thought they would be. So Amber's gonna send some questions forward, and we're going to try to find some real specifics. I don't know what kind of study committees we're doing, but years ago I did the first study committee on Ypsi. I think we need to look at it again. I think we really, and this committee can actually do that if we don't have a study committee, but we really need to look at it and make sure, just like in a waiver, that we are meeting what is being promised. I know that Star did such a good job as the director, and she's in another position. Do we have any idea when a replacement is coming? And because I think that is a key. I want to know if you have any idea about that. If you don't, it's okay. And like I say, we're going to send out some more questions, and I do think the committee is going to work hard to try to see what we can do.
Sure. No, I understand that, and thank you for the interest. I do want to revisit the 100 number, because some of the schools, when we looked at the data, were not including unpaid internships. Mm-hmm. So I do think that number is higher, and we will double check that and get you the number that includes the unpaid as well as the paid.
Yeah.
So we will do that. Ariel Edwards.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Who's behind me has taken over the role that Star Bruner used to play.
Oh, great. Good to meet you. Glad you're here. We'll be getting some some questions and see what we can do to find out more. So thank you for that. I want to thank y'all. I want to thank you. No, I mean it. We look small here right now, but we're listening, and you know what? This is out there in permanent history as we go through the next steps of others who have waited long to speak. So we will sit here and we will listen. And I thank y'all for being here. Persevere.
Yeah. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Okay, so we have some sign-ups, and I'm anxious to hear from every single person. I may not be good with handwriting and reading, so please know that. I'm going to do the best with names, and if I mess them up when you step up, whether the podium or here at the table, please clarify your name for us. So, Lori Simonelli. I'm sorry, I'm trying.
Yeah, they never pronounce Seminole right, unless you're from the north. So thank you for that.
Well, I got lucky. That's all that was. Thank you. So we're going to turn on the podium.
How long we have? You guys usually always time us, so I've got to condense. Great. So, okay. So, my name's Lori Simonelli, and I want to thank the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities for being here and explaining more, because that's really why I came. So, this is why I think, I guess you can hear, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm here today for my daughter, basically, and for me. So I'm retired. I retired from the ER. My daughter's been a special education teacher for 17 years in Forsyth County, Cumming, not the city. You know, it becomes very painful when you have a level 3 autistic child, which is what we have. So at 2 years old, he was his normal little cheery child. He's now going to be 17. And he's non-conversational. He lost all his speech at age 2. He was potty trained at age 11. He's probably one of the more fortunate because this is my daughter's career, and she's very educated in special needs. So he's probably had some benefits over others, possibly. But he loves friends, and that's what I would tell you about my Haven. So he's involved in the Miracle League. My son played pro ball, not his uncle. So he's always been around baseball. He's in his 5th year. He loves art. We have a community center in rec that once a week does it. He did the Tim Tebow prom. Okay? He's done it for 3 years. But he is like a toddler, so it's side play. He's not talking, but he knows this is his friend. And if you ask him what his friend's name is, he'll tell you. If I ask him what kind of day he had, Haven had a good day at school, he's going to say yes. He's going to say, Haven, good day at school? Yes. And that's our level of conversation. My daughter and I bought a home together with a mother-in-law suite in the hope that when I die, and I'm older like some of us are, that'll be the closest he can have to an apartment of his own to take over my living quarters in the same home. He will always be supervised. I put him on the school bus. 100 waivers. They asked for 2.4K. It does have to last a lifetime. But is my grandson one of a lesser God? Is my grandson a child of a lesser God? Because you're telling me all Georgia, not you, but the finance that hands out the money, you're telling me that all children in Georgia are smallest citizens matter. My grandson won't be able to vote. He won't have a voice. He has my daughter's voice, his father's voice. He has a 15-year-old brother. They were born on the same day, 1 year apart. Is it fair to his 15-year-old brother to be trained because his mom and dad can't die? So his brother's already being not trained in a way of being a parent, but nurtured, that he knows one day that burden will be his. And it's not a burden, he's a blessing. But that's our reality. It's just our reality. And we have friends that have been on that wait list. There's 7,500 on that wait list. He ages out of school. He ages out of the safety of all these good things he has right now. He'll be 21 and in 11 months. Yeah. So he's 17. So 3 years and 11 months, he'll exit out of the safety of school and all these beautiful things that give him life as a young man. He has to be showered. He has to be shaved. But if you walk down the street with him, he's the most handsome young man. And he danced at the prom, and he does the Special Olympics. But you know the sad thing is, when he turns 21, it all stops. So by not granting these waivers, you've put him in a prison. So he has none of these beautiful things that allow him to be a teenage boy to the best way possible. And you've given him his iPad in his room. With a waiver, he can go out in the community with a buddy, and he can go to Dollar General, and he can stop. Yes, he will need a buddy with him, but many do. You know, when you talk about the now waiver, it's critical. And my daughter cries. My daughter graduated magna cum laude. She has 3 degrees, and she teaches special needs. And her little boy can't talk. And then she looks at these waivers and cries. And she had to teach today, and that's why I'm here. And I will fight for my daughter, because you know what? Things like this, my daughter has bright blue eyes like the sky. And they're dull now, because it's very hard to have a 17-year-old beautiful young man and know he's got 3 years until it's all took away. And I just plead that a way for the wait list for the NOW program to be accelerated, for more to be added. Governor Kemp said he's offering 100. Dear God, which 100 don't count? I don't know which 100 don't count. Because I'll fight you over mine counting, but then I'll fight you over my next one's counting too. Because he's not from a lesser God. He has autism, and he counts as much as a child at Georgia Tech getting an engineering degree and able to lobby and vote. He counts that much. He counts as much as my daughter, who excelled in college. Anyhow, I need the now. We need the now. It's just not okay. He's 17. He's got till he's 21. We talked about the future thing, and you spoke, and you said it's for a lifetime. Yeah, it is. But you know, the funny thing about it is, autistic children die earlier. So where I'm in my late 60s, my grandson probably won't have that happen because the statistics are against him. But you take away his community life, and it may happen sooner. So please consider giving more than 100. And I know Brian Kemp wrote it, and you're just looking at data, but please pray about it. These children need a chance. That's all.
Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for being a great, wonderful grandmother and mother.
You too, thank you.
Okay, next, Velma Moore and Timothy Moore. Would y'all rather be at the table? Do you want to sit? Be up here? Okay.
I'm already so emotional. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. Sorry. My name is Velma Moore. This is my son, Timothy. I will be 75 years old in November. Timothy's 34. He's on the autism spectrum and has a cognitive disability. I am his only relative over here. He depends on me for all of his needs. He's very trusting, and he lacks a higher level of functional skills. This leaves him open to abuse. My fear is that when I die, which could be today, could be tomorrow, next week, who knows, but we know that I am going to die. My fear is that he will end up on the streets or in some institution because he will no longer have the emotional, physical, and financial support he gets from me. He will be on his own. Every individual has the right to live a fulfilled and satisfying life, free from the dangers of this world. The NowComp Medicaid waiver will provide all the supports Timothy needs to live a safe, healthy, productive, and fulfilled life. This waiver helps level the playing field for people with disabilities to accomplish the same dreams and goals as any other person, allowing them to become valuable, independent, contributing members of society. I urge you all to expand the number of waivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Michael Rudnick.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate you all staying the entire time today. I know some others had other places to be. My name is Michael Rudnick. I'm here to advocate for those that cannot advocate for themselves. My son's 16. He's autistic as well, very high functioning. I'm a friend of Lori's. I've known her for a few years. We did not know each one of us was coming down here, but we met here together. And so, again, I'm also on the city council for the newest city in Georgia, City of Mulberry. We have a meeting in 42 minutes that I'm not going to make, but this is more important to me. I appreciate the leadership of our state being stewards of our money and putting $11 billion in the bank. That's wonderful. I appreciate getting a $500 tax refund for the last year and hopefully this year coming, but I'd much rather have that money spent on special needs individuals that cannot care for themselves after they leave the school system, specifically in Gwinnett County at 22, but the entire state. I don't know what age other students age out in their counties, but in Gwinnett County it's 22. 15% of people have disabilities, and many cannot care for themselves. I don't think my son will ever live on his own. Fortunately, my wife's been able to stay home with him and take care of him and take him to his therapies. Not everybody has that luxury. Not everyone has the luxury of having one parent stay home. Not everyone has the luxury of having two parents. Not everyone has the luxury of having one parent. So these waivers are necessary to care for these individuals. It's the only thing out there that will help care for them. As we stated before, 8,000 to 9,000 people are currently on the waiting list and have been for years and years and years. And I heard you say earlier that, it would be wonderful to wave a magic wand and make this go away. And I would challenge you and say, we can wave a magic wand and we can make it go away. And it is a lifetime of support. But what if we did? Just what if? What if we took that money and we allocated it for these waivers, and we gave these individuals the waivers that they need to care for themselves, and then we told the rest of the state budget to figure out their part. because this is important. And I understand we've got a lot of important things, and there's a lot of people grabbing for pieces of the pie, but this is an important piece of the pie. Someone spoke earlier about the return on investment that the state gets, and that's absolutely true. I lived in the state of Kentucky for about 3.5 years. That state is not forward-thinking, and that state does a lot of reactive behaviors when it comes to individuals with special needs and adults with disabilities, and they're spending billions of dollars on it. I don't want Georgia to end up that way. Let's be proactive and let's spend the money now to get these individuals the placement that they need and the assistance that they need. Removing 100 people from the list, I mean, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the governor removing 100 people from the list. But goodness gracious, can we not up that number? I mean, 2,400 I thought was a reasonable number to ask for. I would ask for all of them. Let's wave that magic wand, and let's just make it happen. But 100 people is not going to do anything. We know that. There's 180,000 kids in Gwinnett County Public Schools. Again, I speak of that because that's the one I know of. 20% of those kids have disabilities. That's 36,000 kids. If only 10% of those kids that have disabilities need caring for, that's 3,600 that Gwinnett County is going to add to this number next year. There's not going to be 3,600 people that roll off of it. So that number is just going to grow. It's going to be like the deficit in the United States. It's only going to continue to grow. Our state has made significant investments in these children through school interventions, preparing them for society, but they need more. Things that we're going to prevent with increased funding will decrease critical care costs, decrease risky behaviors, decrease homelessness, and other preventable issues that these waivers seek to reduce in our state and can make our future better for future generations. My call to action to you all is to think outside the box. And I know the governor asked for 100 people to be removed from this waiver, but let's think much higher than that. And let's think of what we can do versus what we can't do. And think about things that we choose not to do versus things we can't do, because there is a difference. And I appreciate you guys being up here on the jobs that you do, and I know it's very difficult, and I'm not trying to be ugly or anything like that, but I really challenge you to think outside the box and think of what we can do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for your service for the brand new city of Mulberry. We're excited for it.
I'm trying to go beat traffic.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope you make it. Dorinda Peterson. Okay. Mike Pelta? They left, okay. Ryan Whitmire.
Hello, thank you. I know it's late, and so I will try to be as fast as possible. My name is Ryan Whitmire, and I am the current president of SPAD, and I'm also the president and CEO of Developmental Disability Ministries. I started as a case manager in IDD residential services in 2003. And I recently realized that I'm actually the most optimistic about IDD services that I've ever been. Like, the future and everything seems to be coming together. And so I'm so thankful for the Commissioner Tanner and his leadership. I appreciate this committee and the investment that was made last year. Ron Wakefield and his team of getting the waivers operationalized and the funds to start flowing has been really, really great. The commissioner mentioned that the rates were operationalized in November. The funds really started flowing to the provider community in December and in January. For my organization, this actually allowed us to implement career ladders and drastically increase our DSP rates. The investment that was made last year was a lifeline to providers. And what we're seeing now is a lot of good movement, and it's been so early, but we've seen good movement in the number of applications that we're receiving, and so it's upticking. And so all of that is very positive. I recently, and it was this week, I drove by McDonald's by my house, and they had a starting, rate, and DDM's base rate at our career ladder for part-time was $1 more. Last year, it was $2 less. And so that's progress, right? We are making progress. With our career ladders, as you get experience and you move through, it's way more than McDonald's. And so again, I say all this to say the tide is turning because of the investments that are being made. My organization over the last couple of years, we've been shrinking. I was here last year talking about we've closed this, we've done this. We own homes that are vacant because we could not staff them. We now are strategically putting plans in place to reopen homes. We've been slow to fill vacancies because of the concern that we may have to have double staffing, and we're already having trouble just staffing to keep the home open. And so all of these are positives in the right direction. And what I'm asking today is we just continue to stay the course. Last year's investment was about infrastructure. This year's investment, I really do believe that it's time to invest into the people that are desperately in need of services. So the IDD community, we are asking for 2,400 new waivers. This committee is wise and will find the right balance. I'm here to say that the provider community and the tide is moving. In previous years, we talked about, you're going to have a waiting list for the waiting list. What you mentioned earlier is the worst thing that can happen is to have a person get a waiver and not have a provider. I would say that's the second worst thing. The worst thing is not having a waiver, because without a waiver, there is no hope. There is no funding to back it up. Now, we don't want a bunch of people that don't have services, right? So I think y'all will find a balance for that. The last thing is about the return on investment. What Darcy said is so true. It makes a huge difference. And it's not only a return on investment and benefiting the people that are receiving services, it's really a return on investment for all of Georgia. And everybody who lives there is going to benefit from these investments in these waivers. So again, thank you for what this committee does year after year after year. And it's an optimistic time. And so let's stay the course and keep evaluating and adjusting and keep making a huge difference and make progress like we've never made before in the past. So thank y'all.
Chairman Mathiat.
Oh, thank you. I needed that. Thank you so much. You just gave me some hope. So our next meeting, I may have a little more hope than I had 15 minutes ago.
All right, great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your staying the course, because we know how hard it has been at times for SPAD. So thank you for staying there. I want to ask you, just because I missed it, the name of the second organization. You said I'm the president of SPAD and
I'm the CEO and president of Developmental Disability Ministries.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all.
Just a minute. Whitmire. I ain't placed to write. Okay, next, Amy Hughes with Matthew Reardon. Thank you. Thank you for waiting, Amy.
Chris is next. That's very good. I will be brief. I I appreciate y'all taking your time to listen to all the heartfelt needs of so many people. I'm here, Amy Hughes Public Affairs, on behalf of the Matthew Reardon Center for Autism. We've already had discussions about the needs. As you know, the Reardon Center has a mission of education, advocacy, and outreach. Education, they have the only year-round day school for children with autism outside of Atlanta. And as you can see from the needs here, families need a lot of support and children need a lot of support. And the kids who come to the Reardon Center are kids who were unsuccessful in the public school system and were not having their needs met. So they're brought in-house to the Reardon Center for a couple of years, and then they gain the necessary skills and have the therapies and all to be able to go back into the school system. And then, of course, the other mission of the Reardon Center is outreach across Southeast Georgia, helping families get IEPs, and helping them go to their schools and knowing what the rights are to help with their children. The request this year is for $100,000 to assist with increasing the salaries of the special ed teachers and the behavioral specialists. It's been so wonderful that the teachers of the state were able to receive, almost $10,000 in salary increases, thanks to the Kemp administration over the last several years. Unfortunately, it's created a gap between what the Reardon Center is able to pay their teachers and they're essentially the special ed teachers receive $47,000 versus $61,000. So the request is to help bridge that gap with increasing those salaries. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Chris Brown with Friends of Disabled Adults and Children. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman and committee. I'm really happy to speak to you, and thank you for your time today and all these important topics that have been presented. They are dear to my heart as well. I've been dedicated for 28 years at our organization, which has been serving for 39 years people with physical disabilities across the state. And that's been my passion, to grow that access and service all over the state. So everything from hospital beds you need coming home from an injury or an illness, to complex rehab, children's equipment that is maybe delayed from the state or not funded by the state, as well as power chairs. It runs the gamut. Everything you might need to stay independent and thrive in your home, if of a physical nature, assistive technology and HME. That's what we do. So, we're serving already up over 100 counties on a regular basis. There was last year, the state helped us with our startup in Savannah. In 6 months, it's already been incredibly making a huge difference in that whole coastal region. We have people, EMS Behavioral Health is tapping into us every month to get people home who are housed, to get people off the street, to get independent eligibility for housing. So it's really exciting what the program can do and touch. There's the grand opening at the end of August. We delivered a $15,000 safety bed for a 2-year-old at Hospice Savannah. So we've been serving the area for a long time, but that direct site, on-site, that can collect and distribute as well as receive those things has been monumental for the coastal area. In disaster relief, we've been very active. We always are. We've had over 300 items since Hurricane Helene went through our state, helping Macon, Augusta, the city of someone in Baxley, survivors, Emmanuel County, and Savannah. Sheriff Brewer from the Sheriff's Association came by and wanted everything in Savannah. He took 280 items to go help the neighboring Emmanuel County. So it's exactly what we built it to do. And we have this year in the Appropriations Committee, we were working with Representative Mathiak on a request of $225,000 to move into and renovate and build out a Griffin warehouse that has been vacant for 20 years, a state property that has been underutilized. And we're thankful for GVRA to help us get access to that, but it will take some renovations, and we have a lot of our own skin in the game, but it will take a good bit to get that fully serving the middle Georgia area from Noonan, the whole Spalding County, all those areas that we can help the hospital systems with down there. that is going to be a collection and distribution network. Just this week, it's vacant, but we just received from Amazon from North Carolina over $200,000 in pediatric brand new equipment. So it's already an overflow site for us, even though we're not operational there yet. So that's the kind of thing that it can open up for us. In addition to our, at Tucker location, it is full constantly. But Amazon is now moving a product from out of the state to us, donations at a large scale, and we are very much looking forward to that. Almost 9,000 square feet in the Griffin area that we can turn and get that accessible locally. So that is my request. I thank you for your time. Any questions?
Chairman Matthew.
Do they have this?
Chris, are you going to give us papers, huh? Yeah, have a meeting, kill a tree, right? We can't
Like, we're
have a
all
meeting
family
without
right here,
killing a
right
tree.
now, all of y'all that are staying.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about your endeavor. I've been talking about it, as you can well imagine, and
Yes, exciting. It is.
Wow.
It will really help.
yeah, I think that's going to help a lot of people in this room too. So
Yeah, exactly.
Forge on, my friend, forge on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
For sure. Good work. I happen to have been stuck in traffic at some point in the last 6 months, but I was behind this gorgeous Fodak truck.
Right.
But all I could keep thinking was, it's full of good stuff, or it's going to get it.
Yes.
So
yes.
thank you.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely. Absolutely. We're excited what we're doing in Rome to Demarest, Oakwood, Bainbridge, Darien. It's across the whole state
Thank
with
you.
regular deliveries. Yep.
Thank you. Dream big.
Thank you.
Next is DJ McIntyre with the Georgia Council of the Blind.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am not as prepared as I normally am because I didn't realize you guys were meeting until 8 o'clock this morning when we were here for something different. So I apologize if my presentation's not as put together. Thank you to my children for behaving so greatly in my corner. They're amazing. And we just got home from a trip yesterday. We spent 7 hours in the car from North Carolina home, so we're a little off our skelter. I'm just speaking in regards to GVRA and for the blind and visually impaired community. I live an hour away from here without traffic. So I was asked to stay and kind of present. I also wanted to see what Executive Director Wells would share as the presentations you all see don't get out to the public. So if we're not here, we don't see any of this. The report that is furnished on their website is very minimal and gives us not even a full picture of what they're doing. So sometimes we have to be here to actually know what the organization is doing. I did notice he skipped 2 very important slides to me. He skipped the Georgia Industries for the Blind. I'm sure you guys have it in your packet, and the Business Enterprise Program. We do know that both of those are no longer up to the federal government standard, that they are supposed to be with how many blind and visually impaired individuals to those with other disabilities that are working there. There are some regulations there. And then the funding for that, we're struggling with. But all of that aside, I wanted to just go back. The numbers that I can pull from the SRC reports that I can find on the website, just so you can kind of hear from a number standpoint the background of GVRA and blind and visually impaired. I do not include the deafblind, although they are included in a legislation we are trying to pass to get some special services for our group and our people. In 2016, GVRA's total VR, and I'm not sure if it included their PTS clients as well, just their total that came through in 2016 was 35,137 clients. Of those, 877 were blind and visually impaired. The next report I can access is from 2018. The total there was 36,002 clients, with 847 being blind or visually impaired. 2019, total clients were 32,157, with 883 blind clients. In 2020, we saw 33,905, with 814 blind or visually impaired clients. And this is where there's nothing for 2021. Executive Wells and I had a whole conversation about that report is extremely important to those of us collecting data. There's not one up there, but that's okay. So the next one that I have is from 2022. The total clients were 28,198. Of those, only 667 were blind or visually impaired. 2023 total was 29,077 clients. Of that, only 578 are blind or visually impaired. And as of the 2024 study that was put up, they had, as he said, 212 VR clients that they were serving. Of that, only 644 were blind and visually impaired. And my thoughts to you all is, I know the funding isn't going up this year, but when our numbers of blind and visually impaired, the last total was over 250,000 that we know of that consider themselves blind or visually impaired in the state, and that number is climbing. I saw an article recently that even like the new GLP-1 drugs that everyone wants to take for weight loss, I don't blame them for that, but is now causing visual impairments. That's more people. We know diabetes is a leading cause of blindness. We know older age is a leading cause. Our blind numbers are not going down. What's happening is we're not being serviced through vocational rehabilitation, and their funds are not being tracked to ensure that we're actually using funds meant for the BEP program, which is our blind vendor program. A lot of the contracts have been gone to waste. They have not gone after properties, as well as Georgia Industries for the Blind has not been utilized correctly. And I just want to bring that before appropriations and the budget to just make note, like our numbers of clients being served has been going down. And even though we're climbing back up, those who are blind and visually impaired still continue to be underserviced. And that is what we're supposed to do, is to be getting that employment, getting cases closed. And we're seeing the minimum wage for blind people pretty much stay the same, which means they're not getting full-time employment with the help of getting the scholarships to go to college, to get the jobs where they don't have to get any other funding from the state. They can have an independent job and work, which is what everybody here is talking about with all the disabilities. But I really wanted to just bring that up for your attention, and I'll take any questions anyone has. Otherwise, we're going to try to get on the road.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you so much for staying. I so appreciate you and your mom and the kids coming year after year and advocating for such a worthy part of our world. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being patient with us. It was kind of clobber me to look over there and watch y'all. Just, they are being so good, and they have been so good, but this is a very long time for adults to sit still. So, thank you. Get home. Get home. Appreciate it. All right. Next, we have Katina Atmore with Citizens Advocacy.
Join.
That's great. That's great.
Good stretch. Good strong. Did you hear the pop? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to be very quick also as well. So I just want to say greetings to everyone. Thank you for your time and for staying so late to hear from each one of us. My name is Katina Atmore. I work at the Georgia Advocacy Office, and my job there is to support and champion for citizen advocacy. And I have with me today Herbert Denard. He is a board member of the Macon Bibb Citizen Advocacy Office, and he's been a part of citizen advocacy for over 30 years. So real quick, I'm just here to say thank you for all you do for people with disabilities. We'll leave you with that package of information that you can read at your leisure, make and ask, and then end with the testimony of a young lady who could not be here today, but she did ask me to share something with you all. Real quick, I just want to say that a woman by the name of Marianne Williamson said, in every community, there is work to be done. And in every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is power to do it. And that's where citizen advocacy stands. We believe wholeheartedly that we are at a place where we're turning to one another, that people with disabilities need us to turn to one another. And we have been doing that for 46 years, asking people to mean more to one another. So about 2 years ago, we asked for additional funding increase to restore, grow, and strengthen citizen advocacy. And I just wanted to report real quick that increase allowed us to restore the citizen advocacy program in Athens. We did that. We grew by hiring 4 new matchmakers. We also was able to really dedicate some boundaries by reaching out to rural communities looking for people with developmental disabilities. And then the program also strengthens its work through board development and training within and outside of Georgia to ensure its continued success. So we definitely are here to make an ask. But before I do that, I wanted to read Ashley's story. And the reason why I asked Mr. Denard to be here, because he was a part of making this magical story happen. So if you look on I didn't number the pages, but if you look at the back on the last 3 pages of your package, you'll see beautiful pictures of this woman named Ashley. The first picture on page 8 is when Herbert and I first met her. But her story reads as this, and this will sum up the power of citizen advocacy. She says, "My name is Ashley, and my life has been a journey of ups and downs, but I want to share with you how I found hope and independence. I was born with cerebral palsy, and when I was just 6 years old, my mom passed away. It was a huge loss for me, and I didn't understand why I was left behind. My sister, who didn't have a disability, was kept by the family, but I was placed in the care of a nurse who promised to take care of me. But instead of love and care, I received neglect. I often felt invisible, like no one truly saw me for who I was. When I turned 18, I decided I wasn't going to live like that anymore. I didn't want to depend on anyone who didn't care for me. With the help of my cousins, I bought my first plane ticket and flew to Georgia, hoping to start fresh. But it wasn't easy, and I didn't have anywhere to go and no one to turn to. I ended up in a series of nursing homes. They weren't the place for me, but I felt trapped and forgotten and alone. I thought that maybe this was my life I had to accept. But then something changed. Citizen advocacy heard my story, and they didn't just listen, they really heard me. They believed in me, and that meant the world. They connected me with Alicia, an advocate who saw something in me I had almost forgotten, my dreams. Alicia wasn't just a citizen advocate. She genuinely cared about me. We both had a love for reading mystery novels, and that connection helped us bond right away. She didn't just help me with paperwork or logistics. She helped me regain hope. With Alicia by my side, we worked with Disability Connections, the Center for Independent Living, and in 7 months, I was able to move out of the nursing home and into my own home. I had my own space, my own independence, and the support I needed to live life on my own terms. Today, I'm no longer just surviving, I'm living. I have my own apartment, I'm reading the books I love, and I have friends who care about me, like Alicia. She's become one of my closest friends, and I'm so grateful for the difference she's made in my life. I don't know where I would be without the support of citizen advocacy. They believed in me when I felt like no one else did. They made sure I had the chance to live a life filled with dignity, love, and independence I always wanted. Now when I think about my future, I have hope, real hope. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not alone. I have a community around me, and that means everything. And that is the power of citizen advocacy, building a community around people by just asking one person to say yes to being in the life of a person with a disability. And as I listened to some of the stories, I did pass out my business card because Wolf Wolfensberger, who founded Citizen Advocacy, he founded it on the question that the mom stood there and said, I'm not going to always live, so what's going to happen to my son or daughter? Citizen Advocacy has been answering that question for families by making sure that there is somebody that would continue to love the person with the disability. And if you look on page 6, you'll be able to see like a snapshot of our work, the numbers, how many matches we've made, how much we continue to support and grow in this community, because we are in a place and a time where we will have to turn to one another, and that's what we've done today with you all listening to us. I do have an ask real quick before I ask Herbert to say one thing. We are definitely here to ask for an additional $200,000 in funding, which will total $600,000 for FY26. The reason why we're asking for that money is because we are looking ahead. We do want citizen advocacy to further its mission and grow in those efforts. We want to grow in those efforts in Gainesville and in Augusta. So thank you.
Thank you very much. When I first met her, I met with Katina. But when she walked into the nursing home, she asked the lady that she was talking to, one of the directors, do you have anybody in this nursing home that never get visitors? And they pointed out two people. Alicia, she pointed out two people, Diablo. And in talking to her, we found out she liked to read books. She liked to eat good food, decent food that's healthy for you. And I knew a person just like that. And so we introduced them. We took them out to a Mexican restaurant because the young lady said she liked Mexican food, but she had not had it in about 15 years. She never left a nursing home unless she was going to the doctor. So we went out to the Mexican restaurant, and she sat down there and ate it. And her and Alicia was talking about books they had read, and she started smiling. And she said something. She looked at me and said, "This was a good day." And I thought about that. A simple meal. She said, "This was a good day." And the process started, the friends met, and now she's in her own home. And I thank Katina for that. But in her own home, in a simple meal, all she could say was, with tears in her eyes, "This was a good day." And when you do something good for people, you feel good. When you do something simple, just simple things, you feel good. And I was happy to be a part of that.
Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions?
Can't even talk.
Yeah.
No.
So I just want to give praise to Herbert. He's been a citizen. He's been a part of citizen advocacy for over 30 years. He's been an advocate twice. The first person that he advocated for, he passed away. He drowned. But Herbert stayed so connected to citizen advocacy. He still continued to be there. And you serve on the board. And when we needed a matchmaker, he stood in place as an interim coordinator. He made 9 matches in like 5 months because he went to his friends, his church, and he said, "I need you to stand beside this person. I need you to be in their life." And they said yes. And as of today, they still continue to be in the person's life.
There are more good people. There are more good people that want to do good things than bad people. And if you ask them, a lot of them will participate and feel good about it. Thank you.
And we advocate for more of that. We advocate for more of that because even though the institutions are not the answer, confining people is not the answer. Helping people figure out things and how to do it is the answer. And we've seen it work, and we've seen it work well. Thank you.
Well, it always takes that person walking that walk beside you, though. That is so important. I just wanted to ask you, I know you said church and friends. Where is home for you?
Home. What was that?
Where's home for you?
What's
Macon, Georgia.
Mike?
The home of Otis Redding.
Katina knows that I have a child there, so it's very special to my heart, too. Good town. Thank y'all for working on it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, Derek Lane with Mighty Hero Homes. Is this yours or mine?
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Derek Lane with Mighty Hero Homes, represent a nonprofit that we're domiciled here in Georgia and McDonough. I'm here to advocate on behalf of a population that our nonprofit represents that's greatly affected by the mental health crisis that we've discussed here today, and they also suffer from an extreme lack of affordable housing, and that's our Georgia veteran community. Our veterans have bravely served our nation, and it's our duty to ensure that they receive the benefits that they need after their service. So investing in these veterans, especially those struggling with mental health, it will have generational impact. In Georgia, 1 in 5 veterans suffer from a substantial chronic stress and mental health crisis. Similar proportion faces a financial stress which leads to depression. Many veterans grapple with the significant health and socioeconomic challenges. This population has about a representation of 69% that suffer from chronic pain, 23% from depression, 33% from PTSD, and it's estimated that 48 to 67% of these homeless veterans suffer from some form of mental health issue. So the mental health crisis and challenges that were discussed here today play a significant factor in contributing to their being unhoused amongst this veteran population. So also crippling this is an lack of affordable housing, which we aim to try to contribute to providing affordable housing that these veterans can one day own. The Georgia veteran population ranks 9th nationally. However, our veterans are disproportionately represented among the housing or the homeless population. This recent data indicates that approximately about 640 veterans are considered homeless in Georgia. And alarmingly, this number has almost doubled since 2022. And sadly, a growing proportion of these are women, single mother veterans. Georgia, as you are well aware, initiated the efforts through GDVS with a $56 million budget, of which $1 million went to mental health, and Commissioner Ross is doing a fantastic job in distributing those funds and supporting the mental health crisis that our veterans are experiencing. But despite these efforts, there remains a significant gap between the resources available and the needs of our veterans. Georgia's support infrastructure for veterans lags well behind neighboring states. Alabama and South Carolina, for example, have half the veteran population than we do, yet we only have 2 veteran homes, as I think the gentleman discussed today, whereas these states have 6. So we do lack the number of beds that are needed and affordable housing for our veterans. So this shortfall highlights an urgent requirement for additional housing services that also have the wraparound services that our resident care veterans need. So you've obviously heard today about the critical need of this. There's a pause in federal funding, which we're all aware of, which is impacting nonprofits and other organizations that are trying to contribute to the mental health help and therapy that these individuals need. So this only exacerbates the challenges faced by the veterans that are seeking this assistance. Multifaceted approach is needed, so whether it be increased state funding, which obviously we're talking about here today, expansion of facilities, which is investing in building housing for veterans and supportive housing units, enhanced mental health services, obviously as well, and community partnerships. So in closing, I just want to say that our veterans have made immense sacrifices for our country. It's our duty to ensure they receive the support they need to lead healthy and stable lives. Addressing the mental health crisis and housing through the GHVP among the Georgia's veterans requires a concerted effort and increased funding. And by investing in comprehensive support services and stable housing, we can honor their service and provide them with the care they rightfully deserve, especially those who are struggling with these mental health issues. And our motto is because they deserve better. And so God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hanging with us.
Sure.
And making sure we know what
And you're from McDonough.
I live in East Cobb, but we're based in McDonough. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, next I believe is Wesley Myrick with the Georgia, my eyes are maybe getting tired, public policy. Yeah, Institute of Public Policy. Yeah,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Wesley Myrick, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Georgia Interfaith Public Policy Center. We are an ecumenical, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with the mission of educating and empowering the faith community to advocate for the common good. So our leadership actually serves as spiritual leaders for more than 500,000 Georgians, representing both the Baptist, Episcopal, Jewish, Evangelical Lutheran, Muslim, and United Methodist traditions. And so today I speak to offer our support for the proposed $20 million in additional funding for the Georgia Housing Voucher Program to house the chronically homeless and severe and persistent mental, for those that are chronically homeless with severe and persistent mental illness. As a community of the faithful, we believe that the common good is served when we serve our most vulnerable neighbors. In alignment with our shared values of love, justice, mercy, and hospitality, we support the proposed increase in funding as it will provide the resources necessary to love our unhoused neighbors, treat them mercifully, further envelop them in each person the housing voucher program serves in communities that are just and hospitable despite their mental illness. So as you consider alternatives to funding the GHVP, it should be noted that obviously this program is a great return on investment for taxpayer dollars in terms of that ROI. It is nationally recognized both as a program for its efficacy and its impact, and thereby it's worthy of additional support to meet the unprecedented need in our state. So for all these reasons, I ask that you support the proposed funding for expansion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for adding your support to their work. Appreciate it. Next, we have Whitney Griggs, Georgians for a Healthy Future. Had to leave? Okay. What about Brittany McLemore, Georgia Radio Reading Service? Wonderful.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. Can you hear me okay? Good. I didn't hit play yet. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Hello, Madam Chair. Oh, there it goes. You're fine. And committee members, thank you for having me today. My name is Brittany McLemore. I am the executive. I'm so sorry. It's okay. You're fine. It doesn't need video. Just audio. Perfect, thank you. Okay. Imagine waking up one morning and finding that the words on the page have vanished. The books you love, the newspapers you rely on, and even the labels on your groceries, suddenly they're unreadable. What would you do? This is the reality for thousands of Georgians who are blind, have low vision, or face other print impairments. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I stand before you on behalf of the Georgia Radio Reading Service, the premier radio reading service whose mission is to empower and enhance the lives of blind, low vision, and print impaired Georgians through equal access of inclusive, informative, educational, and entertaining printed material. Every day we have over 230 volunteers that dedicate their time to bring newspapers, magazines, books, and other publications to life for our listeners. Whether it's keeping up with local news and community events, reading the grocery ads, or simply enjoying a good book, GARS ensures that our audience stays informed, connected, and engaged with the world around them. Now, I do have a testimonial from one of our listeners, or two of our listeners rather, but for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and do one. He is a Rome listener. His name is Don McShane. And he was all too excited to give his testimonial, so we were really, excited to share that with you. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Just a little background, he is both blind and hard of hearing, so it might be a little hard to hear if you want to just raise up the volume a little.
The thing I appreciate is I saw that they read books. They actually read talking books, and they have the readers. And these are really great readers. I don't want to mention too many names because I might leave out somebody, but James Duffy Hickey, Rosemary Scalisa, and her husband, and Merritt Coward come out to be the names that I am reading right now, and that's primarily the way I use the radio bars at the point reading the reading books. Also, the way that they're loaded, downloaded, you don't have to download anything. You just look for their search for the book, look for it. And Eyes on Success is one of my favorites. And Out and About is another one. For people who need to, they want to have issues about it, they depend on your families all the time and whatever, or other relatives, in case, husbands, wives, whatever. Anytime grounds is definitely an excellent source of information. Like, for instance, your grocery shopping list, things like that, to help people shopping lists, and all of the information that you distribute, to make a long story short, is really essential for, and it really has been, I think, over the years, a help to people with low vision and blindness problems.
One of many listeners that we have, and we rely on the testimonials of our listeners because, it helps us understand the services that we need to provide, what we need to read and put on the air, getting their feedback. So this need for this service is so great now. According to the CDC, almost 300,000 Georgians live with visual impairments, and this number is expected to rise as our population ages. So for nearly 45 years, GARS has and continues to bridge the accessibility gap, empowering individuals to maintain their independence and participate fully in society. With almost 12,000 active listeners through our website, the Amazon Echo Dot, telephone users, the radio, or other applications, we continue to expand our footprint in the blind and low vision community. We are increasing our profile to be more accessible to our users and provide more inclusive programming by developing an app, launching new podcasts, and being more present on social media. Our strategic initiatives include expanding digital accessibility and technology, strengthening the community and stakeholder engagement, content and audience development, and advocacy and policy involvement. However, we cannot do this alone, so we rely on the partnerships and community with programs and organizations like Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, Georgia Library Services for the Blind and Print Disabled, the Georgia Council of the Blind, and the National Federation of the Blind, and we also rely on the funding that we receive to keep our service strong and expand our reach. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of Georgia Radio Reading Service. Your support has been crucial for us, Chair Lady and committee members. Today, I urge the continued support of GARS so that we can continue to move forward in this age of technology and assisting our listeners in connecting with the world around them, again, including the podcast, including additional programming and services to connect them to the community, and whether that be workshops as far as Braille instruction, we are looking to do that, audio description for our listeners so that they can have access to events like theaters. We have audio described theater events, community events, sporting events, things that obviously they are unable to see, but they will still feel immersed in these experiences. So we appreciate your continued support. We ask for your continued support. And I just thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Any questions?
Yes,
right there.
There's questions.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. You have been here. The McIntyres have talked about Georgia Radio in the past. Tell me about technology now, because it's changed so much just in the last little bit of time. So what does that look like now for our blind citizens?
Yeah, so with GARS, we currently provide radio receivers for those who request it, but we also have the Amazon Echo Dots that we provide for our listeners. So our services are free, and we use that. We have an Amazon skill, and so what that means is, when you speak to Alexa, say, Alexa, play Michael Jackson, right? And it'll go ahead and do that. It's the same with GARS. So say, Alexa, play GARS, and then they'll hear our live broadcast.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I have recently noticed in the Rome News, where I live, that there is mention of the service and the
Yes.
availability and the connectivity. So thank you. I'm glad my hometown is connected to you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for hanging with us, too. This was a long day, I know.
Thank you for hanging with us.
So next we have Catherine Bassel.
I do have a couple handouts for y'all.
Okay.
I will try to keep this to 2 minutes or less. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and committee member. Was that? Oh, thank you. My name is Catherine Bassel. I'm the CEO at Partners for Home. We are the lead agency for the Atlanta Homeless Continuum of Care. I got a text message this morning from the CEO of a Fortune 500 company who said he was in San Francisco this past weekend and saw no street homelessness and asked what they were doing differently. And I quickly responded and said they fund $850 million a year, which is up from $350 million 6 years ago. And that's an annual investment, and they've increased housing and shelter by 50% with a total of 14,000 units of supportive housing and 4,200 shelter beds, just under 20,000 units and beds of support annually. They have seen their first year-over-year reduction in unsheltered homelessness over the last 3 years, and Houston and Dallas and several other cities are on similar trajectories with large-scale investments in homelessness. In Atlanta, we have $14 million in dedicated funds from HUD Continuum of Care funding. We have made some significant one-time investments at the local level, but we have no local or state dedicated recurring revenue stream for homelessness. We have just under 2,800 supportive housing units across our city and 2,300 shelter and transitional housing beds. However, for every one household we house, another 2.5 are becoming homeless. You heard from Commissioner Tanner, who's been a tremendous partner to us, and we're very grateful for his collaboration. But Georgia Housing Voucher is now at capacity, and we desperately need more capacity for the voucher program. Hospital beds are now at capacity for people with severe and persistent mental illness. He shared that our history of continuous reactivity does not work, and that we must invest in increased capacity to take care of this population. And we're seeing an ever-increasing number of people who are homeless with reported severe and persistent mental illness. In January 2024's point-in-time count, a record number 48% of people reported a mental illness and 40% reported a substance abuse disorder. And what we know from other communities making progress on this issue is that we must invest at the right level to be able to move people out of homelessness as quickly as possible. With proper investment, we can make a visible and tangible impact in reducing the number of people on our street. And yet, we've been working and doing a tremendous amount of work since 2016. We have rehoused 14,000 households across our community. We've created over 3,000 new interventions of permanent housing. We've built over 350 new units of supportive housing, and we will deliver a record number 700 more units of permanent supportive housing in the next 18 months. We're going to leverage the most unprecedented investment at the local level with a recent issuance of a $50 million bond from the City of Atlanta to deliver 500 units of supportive housing by the end of this year. This is part of a $212 million campaign to significantly reduce unsheltered homelessness by the end of 2026. We have raised $20 million of 93 million from the private sector and over $100 million from the public sector for this campaign. Led by Chris Womack, the CEO of Southern Company, he was the one who texted me this morning, this campaign is generating tremendous momentum with 2 other C-suite Fortune 500 leaders committed to co-chair with Chris, and we hope to make that announcement next week. A key part of this work includes a targeted focus on downtown. The continued encampments downtown are not lost on us. We are actively working to close encampments downtown, but we desperately need dedicated resources to support what is a very high acuity population struggling with severe mental illness on the streets. We've heard we are seeing this in our jails and prisons today from Commissioner Tanner, and we're also seeing this on our streets. We've got to deliver the right care and capacity to this high needs population. We are requesting funding in both the FY amended 25 as well as the FY 26 budget. This includes funding for continuation of outreach that this committee supported over a year or in 2 sessions ago, but it became one-time funding, and so it's slated to be removed from the Department of Behavioral Health's budget. And we're requesting that that stays in the budget or is added back into the budget for the FY amended. We're also requesting funding for 3 dedicated ACT teams. Assertive community treatment is the highest level of outpatient care short of hospitalization. It's a robust team with a psychiatrist, a nurse, a social worker, and a peer specialist. They see clients where they are. In this case, it would be on the street, under bridges, in encampments. 2 or 3 times per week or more often, they do med management. They assist with all linkages to care, including housing that we will be actively growing through the larger campaign, which these dollars will leverage. I provided a 2-pager for you that outlines the robust and comprehensive plan for both downtown, as well as the funding ask before you today. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Do you have anything, Karen? Well, you know, I think we are so familiar and grateful for the work that you're doing, and you've helped us understand it along the way. I know we've got a couple more speakers that care greatly about it, but thank you for hanging with us. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I know
Thank
you've
you.
got important work to go do, so
Thank you for staying as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Catherine Lawler.
Catherine's the CEO of Mercy Care. And Sister Jane, Sister Mercy, it's her birthday tonight, so Catherine had to leave.
She had to leave. Okay, thank you. Elizabeth Apley.
Well, I was going to play cleanup. Maybe let Beth go before me, and I'll take the last word on the case.
Whatever you would like to do. Whatever, thank you. We have, 3. Okay, thank you. This is
Thank you, Chairwoman Dempsey and member of the subcommittee. My name is Beth Stevens. I'm the State and Local Policy Director for Enterprise Community Partners Southeast Office here in Georgia. I'm here to advocate also for increased funding for the Georgia Housing Voucher Program. Enterprise Community Partners, my organization, is a national nonpartisan affordable housing intermediary providing capital, policy, and programs to support the production and preservation of affordable housing. We are a trusted resource with a long track record of developing housing solutions in partnership with state and local leaders. No matter who we are, where we've come from across the state, or challenges we've faced, we all want the opportunity to live enriching lives in communities that keep us healthy, safe, and connected. Yet too many people across our state are facing rising housing costs and difficulty accessing health care. These pressures are faced by many of us and have the biggest impact on the people who are at risk of homelessness or already experiencing it. Enterprise supports proven solutions to homelessness, like investments in affordable housing, permanent housing paired with supportive services, and emergency shelter for everyone who needs it. When we connect people experiencing homelessness to housing in our communities are safer and healthier, and we are saving money in public spending on emergency room visits and incarceration costs. The Georgia Housing Voucher Program does exactly this. It connects people who are experiencing homelessness and living with severe and persistent mental illness to housing and supportive services. Therefore, we urge the state to direct additional resources toward this exemplary program so that we can work to end homelessness and house and help those in our communities who need it the most. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, Elizabeth?
I didn't want to jump over Deborah. That was not my intention.
It's okay. Deborah was on the list last, so we're still good. I'm sorry.
So, Madam Chair, Representative Mathiak, thank you for your patience. I have to depart from my planned remarks to say, I have been advocating for funding for human resources for over 30 sessions. And this committee, this subcommittee, and your leadership, Madam Chair, has continued the tradition of allowing every voice to be heard. And I thank you for that. We all thank you for that. And so Commissioner Tanner made clear that that there is a hole in the budget as it relates to the funding for the GHVP, that funding is needed to close that gap, and that it's essential that we significantly increase the funding if we hope to exit the settlement agreement under the Olmstead lawsuit. I'm not going to reiterate again what I've told you time and again, and what you know, that this is cost effective and that it is successful. We save money by investing in supportive housing for this population. We're serving now, as the Commissioner said, 2,159 people. We're obligated to serve 9,000 people in the target population of chronically homeless with severe and persistent mental illness cycling through the criminal justice system, the hospitals, and the ERs. The final report of the Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission this year said every single one of their subcommittees emphasized how essential it is to break this cycle of homelessness, behavioral health care, incarceration. Housing is the only solution to homelessness, and yet I and several of the people in this room and more than 20 other advocates for the homeless spent the afternoon yesterday fighting House Bill 295, which provides a cause of action in taxpayers to sue the city or the county for failing to enforce the criminal laws against unsheltered homelessness. That if they have a policy not to arrest people for sleeping on the street or obstructing the sidewalk or panhandling or loitering or urinating in public, one of the witnesses called it nonviolent, victimless crimes of survival. These are things that people do because they have no place to live. The auditor's report that was commissioned, that was required under SB 62 that passed 2 years ago, was directed and did in fact perform an analysis of all of the federal, state, and local funding being spent on homelessness in Georgia. And the auditor's report found that the money was being spent in compliance with legal requirements and being spent effectively, but the final conclusion is that overwhelmingly the funding was federal. The state has a role to play in funding the only known solution to homelessness, and that is housing. And for this particularly vulnerable population, it's permanent supportive housing with wraparound services. So we not only are under a legal obligation to do it, we have the obligation of using taxpayer dollars in the most cost-effective way, and we have the moral obligation that has been emphasized again today. So I thank you. I'm not going to repeat what's in the one sheet, but I will point to you that there are some 25 groups listed at the bottom of the red and white one sheet. All names that you know who are serving this community. And one of those is the Georgia Mental Health Policy Partnership. So I actually Xeroxed the 70 groups that are a part of that partnership that advocate for, on behalf of mental health issues, who support this budget ask of $20 million in the FY26 budget. So I'm always available to answer questions. Thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, and you know we will be in touch. You are one of the most faithful advocates I've known forever on this, and I just really appreciate it. I was sitting here trying to look up real quick because I'm not
Yeah.
even familiar with HB 295, so I will look at that and find out more about it.
I appreciate that.
Was it
I'm
in
not
committee yesterday? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It was in committee yesterday.
Public safety.
Public safety. And, it has something about sanctuary cities as well, but that's not the issue. I mean,
Yeah, I
what
think
the
it is.
legislature said is that the cities and counties are not enforcing their laws against these unsheltered people. Putting these people in jail is no solution.
Does it specifically say to put them in jail, or is it?
It
I'm not
says
sure that it directs what
It's-
to do.
No, they say that they have to enforce the criminal laws. It doesn't say put them in jail.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But the chairman said, well, having a law enforcement background himself, said, we don't want them to arrest these people. We want them to take them to get services. And then he followed that up in his own words, but there are very few places to take them.
Right.
We don't have the resources to solve it. And I reminded the committee as I advocated against the bill, along with 25 other people, that I have advocated to many of those people are on the Appropriations Committee. They know we mean it, that we're not just being difficult. We all want to see people safely and decently housed, but we have to invest to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Miss Deborah, take us home. Bless your heart. I know you want to go home.
You're still here, so I'm still here. Thank you. I'm Deborah Stokes, Executive Director of the Georgia Council on Aging, and I just wanted to address the committee to let them know how much I appreciate what the committee has done over the past years, and to reiterate and point out the fact that there is nothing that was discussed in this hearing that doesn't intersect with the aging population. And I wanted to particularly point out our congratulations and thanks to Commissioner Tanner, because this year, for the first time, he invited the Georgia Council on Aging, myself as Executive Director, to serve on a work group working within the Behavioral Health Reform and Innovation Commission. That was a big step for us. We were very happy to have a seat at the table because, as I said, nothing that we discussed today fails to intersect with the aging population. So I just wanted to kind of bring that home and give a little shout out to Commissioner Tanner and the work that he's doing, but just sort of to remind us that we are all aging, and all of these problems, these challenges that are being faced, don't go away when you get older. They just get more so. So thank you, and I really appreciate your being here. It's the least I can do to continue to be here. So thank you.
Well,
I know you
thank
don't
you.
have any questions.
No, we don't have any questions. We love y'all. We love y'all, that's for sure. And I really think we need to let everybody who's working on this go home too, because we're keeping others here. So thank y'all so much. We are adjourned. Appreciate it. We will be very thoughtful about what we do.